Rain hammered the streets of Manhattan like bullets against steel. Emma Whitmore stood frozen outside the glass tower of Moretti Global Holdings, her hand trembling as she touched the bruise hidden beneath 3 layers of concealer. She knew the moment she walked through those doors, everyone would see it, the crack in her perfect armor, the truth she'd been hiding for weeks. And upstairs, waiting in his corner office overlooking the city like a predator surveying his kingdom, was Lucien Moretti, the most dangerous man she'd ever met. He would notice. He always noticed everything. What Emma didn't know was that within 12 hours, her ex-boyfriend would be bleeding on a warehouse floor. Lucien's enemies would mark her for death, and she would make a choice that would transform her from victim into Queen of New York's most brutal empire. If you want to see how a woman goes from hiding bruises to ruling beside a monster, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Shake. Emma's heels clicked against marble as she crossed the lobby, each step echoing like a countdown. Her reflection stared back from polished black stone, professional, composed, invisible. Exactly how she'd designed herself to be. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like drowning in slow motion. She'd worked at Moretti Global Holdings for 8 months. 8 months of keeping her head down, analyzing financial reports, making herself small and efficient and unremarkable. The perfect analyst. The invisible woman. That's what you had to be when you worked for a man like Lucien Moretti. Everyone knew the rumors. How he'd built an empire on equal parts legitimate business and carefully concealed violence. How rivals who challenged him disappeared. How politicians who crossed him found themselves exposed and destroyed. How his name alone could make grown men go silent in boardrooms. Emma had seen him exactly twice since her interview, both times from a distance. Moving through the office like a storm everyone scrambled to avoid. She told herself she was safe in her invisibility. But this morning, Travis had destroyed that illusion with his fists. The bruise throbbed beneath her makeup as the elevator doors opened. Emma stepped into the executive suite, forcing her breathing steady. Her assistant manager, David, looked up from his desk, and his eyes went straight to her jaw. "Jesus, Emma, what happened to your—" "I'm fine." Her voice came out harder than she intended. "Where's the Reynolds file?" David hesitated, his gaze lingering on her face with obvious concern. "It's on your desk." "But Emma, if you need to take the day—" "I said I'm fine." She walked past him before he could press further, shutting her office door with deliberate calm. The moment the latch clicked, her hands started shaking. Travis had shown up at her apartment last night, drunk, furious that she'd blocked his number after their breakup 3 weeks ago. He'd pounded on her door until she opened it just to stop the neighbors from calling the police, and the second she did, his hand was around her throat. "You think you can just cut me out?" he'd snarled, shoving her against the wall. "After everything I did for you?" Emma had fought back, clawed at his face, screamed, but Travis was bigger, stronger, angrier. His fist caught her jaw and the world exploded into white light and copper taste. She didn't remember him leaving, just waking up on her kitchen floor at 3 a.m. with blood in her mouth and terror in her chest. Now, sitting at her desk trying to focus on financial projections, Emma felt the walls closing in. She should report him, should file charges, should do something other than hide behind makeup and pretend nothing happened. But she knew how this worked. Travis came from money, his family had lawyers, and Emma was nobody. Just another woman who'd be blamed for staying with him too long or provoking him or lying for attention. So she'd covered the bruise and come to work like nothing was wrong. Her phone buzzed. Internal message from the executive floor. "Mr. Moretti requests your presence immediately." Conference room A. Emma's stomach dropped. She'd never been summoned by Lucien Moretti directly. Never even been in the same room with him for more than 30 seconds. Analysts didn't interact with the CEO unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. She checked her face in her compact mirror one more time, adjusted her collar, and headed for the elevator with her pulse hammering in her throat. The 46th floor was silent in a way that felt intentional, like even the air knew not to make noise up here. Emma followed the signs to conference room A, her heels sinking into carpet so thick it swallowed sound. The doors were already open. Lucien Moretti stood at the windows with his back to her, hands in his pockets, staring out at the rain-soaked city. He wore a charcoal suit that fit like a weapon. Dark hair, sharp jaw, posture that radiated absolute control. Emma had seen photographs. None of them captured the reality of him. "Sir?" Her voice sounded small in the massive room. "Close the door." She obeyed, her hand trembling on the handle. The latch clicked like a gunshot. Lucian turned slowly. Emma's first coherent thought was that his eyes were gray. Not blue, not green, but the color of winter storms. His second thought was that he was looking directly at her bruise. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. 10. 15. "Come here." His voice was quiet, controlled. But underneath it was something that made Emma's instincts scream danger. She forced herself to walk forward, stopping 6 feet away. Lucien closed the distance in 2 strides. Before Emma could react, he caught her chin gently between his fingers and tilted her face toward the window light. His touch was surprisingly careful, clinical, but his eyes had gone utterly cold. "Who touched you?" The question was so soft, Emma almost didn't hear it, but the fury underneath was unmistakable. It's nothing. Who touched you?" Emma's throat closed. She wanted to lie, wanted to deflect, but something about the way Lucien was looking at her, like he could see straight through every defense she'd ever built, made the truth spill out before she could stop it. "My ex-boyfriend, Travis Hale. Last night he showed up at my apartment and—" "Did you call the police?" "No." "Why not?" "Because it wouldn't matter." The words came out bitter. "His family has money, lawyers. You're one of my employees." Lucien released her chin but didn't step back. "That makes you my responsibility." Emma's pulse was hammering so hard she could barely think. I wasn't asking what you need." He pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed without looking away from her face. Someone answered immediately. "Vincent, I need a full workup on Travis Hale. Financial records, addresses, known associates, everything. 30 minutes. He ended the call. Emma stared at him. "What are you doing?" "Fixing a problem." "You can't just... This isn't your business." "You made it my business when you walked into my building wearing another man's violence on your face." Lucian's voice stayed calm, but his eyes had gone darker. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight?" "My apartment is fine." "No. It's not." He typed something into his phone. "I'm sending a security detail to pack your essentials and move you to a hotel. You'll stay there until this is resolved. I'm not letting you control my life because I'm not controlling anything." Lucien looked at her with something almost like patience. "I'm protecting what's mine." The possessiveness in that statement should have terrified Emma, should have sent her running, but instead she felt something dangerous and desperate unfurling in her chest. Safety. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. "Why do you care?" The question came out barely above a whisper. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he said, "Do you remember your interview 8 months ago?" Emma nodded slowly. "You spent 20 minutes explaining why my company's filing system was inefficient. You showed me exactly how we were losing millions in redundant processes. You weren't afraid of me. You weren't trying to impress me. You just wanted the work to be better." He moved closer, close enough that Emma could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. "I've been watching you since that day, Emma, waiting for you to see your own value. And now some piece of shit put his hands on you and made you doubt it." Emma's breathing had gone shallow. "You've been watching me?" "Yes." "That's obsessive, inappropriate, dangerous." Lucien's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'm aware. But I'm also not going to apologize for it. Because right now the fact that I pay attention means I can make sure Travis Hale never comes near you again." "What are you going to do to him?" "What do you want me to do to him?" The question hung in the air between them like a lit match hovering over gasoline. Emma knew what she should say. Should tell him to back off, to let the legal system handle it, to keep his distance. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "I want him to be afraid." Lucian's eyes gleamed with approval. "Then that's what you'll get." Hamak. By the time Emma left the conference room 20 minutes later, her entire life had shifted sideways. Lucien had made 6 phone calls in front of her, each one calm, controlled, and utterly terrifying in its implications. Security teams mobilized, legal documentation prepared, Hotels booked, protection details assigned. Emma felt like she'd been caught in a riptide and dragged out to deeper water. David was waiting at her desk when she returned, his expression carefully neutral. Mr. Moretti's office called. They said you're being reassigned temporarily to direct strategic consulting, executive level. Emma blinked. What? Effective immediately. You'll have an office on 46. David cleared his throat. Congratulations, I guess? She barely heard him. Her mind was still replaying the way Lucien had looked at her in that conference room, like she was something valuable that someone had dared to damage, like she belonged to him. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A car is waiting downstairs. Driver will take you to the peninsula. Your room is under reservation. Don't go back to your apartment tonight. Unknown number. This is Lucien. Save this number. Emma stared at the screen. Then, before she could think better of it, she typed, Emma, thank you. 3 dots appeared immediately. Lucien, don't thank me yet. The Peninsula suite was absurd. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Marble bathroom bigger than her entire apartment. King bed with sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Emma stood at the window watching rain streak the glass and tried to process what had happened. In the span of 6 hours, she'd gone from hiding a bruise to being personally protected by the most dangerous man in New York. She should be terrified. Should be planning her escape. Instead, she felt something close to relief. Her phone rang. Unknown number, but she knew who it was. Hello? Are you settled? Lucien's voice was low, controlled. Yes, this is too much. The hotel, the security, it's barely enough. A pause. I'm sending someone to bring you dinner you haven't eaten today. How do you know that? Because you're the type who forgets to eat when you're stressed, and today has been stressful. Emma should have been disturbed by how much he'd already learned about her patterns, but instead she just felt seen. What did you do about Travis? My people are monitoring his location. He's currently at a bar in Murray Hill getting drunk and texting you from 3 different numbers you've blocked. Another pause. He won't bother you again after tonight. Lucien, Emma. His voice went softer, dangerously gentle. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Every logical instinct Emma had screamed that trusting Lucien Moretti was the worst decision she could possibly make. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, yes. Good. Get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow. He ended the call before she could respond. Emma sank onto the edge of the enormous bed and tried to slow her racing heart. She'd just agreed to trust a man who built empires on violence and control. A man who'd been watching her for months without her knowledge. A man whose protection felt more like possession. But underneath the fear was something else. Something darker and more honest. She wanted this. Wanted someone powerful enough to make her safe. Wanted to stop being afraid every time she heard footsteps in her hallway or a knock at her door. Travis had made her feel small and worthless and afraid. Lucien made her feel seen, and Emma was starting to realize how dangerous that feeling could be. She didn't hear about Travis until the next morning. Emma arrived at Moretti Global at 7 a.m., escorted by 2 silent men in dark suits who'd been waiting in the Peninsula lobby and rode the elevator to the 46th floor in surreal silence. Her new office was twice the size of her old one. Corner windows, real art on the walls, her nameplate already on the door. A white rose sat in a crystal vase on her desk. No card, no explanation. But Emma knew exactly who'd sent it. She was still staring at the flower when her office phone rang. Emma Whitmore. Miss Whitmore, this is Detective Sarah Chen with NYPD. I'm calling regarding an incident involving Travis Hale last night. Emma's stomach clenched. What kind of incident? Mr. Hale was assaulted outside his apartment building around 1 a.m. He's currently hospitalized with multiple fractures and internal injuries. He claims you sent people to attack him. The world tilted sideways. I wasn't anywhere near. We know. Multiple witnesses place you at the Peninsula Hotel all evening. We've reviewed security footage. A pause. Mr. Hale also claims he was assaulted by associates of Lucien Moretti. Can you confirm or deny any connection between yourself and Mr. Moretti? Emma's mind raced. I work for Mr. Moretti's company. Is your relationship professional or personal? Professional. Ms. Whitmore, if you're being coerced or threatened, I'm not. Emma kept her voice steady despite her hammering pulse. Detective Travis Hale assaulted me 2 nights ago. He broke into my apartment and hit me. I can send you photos of the bruising. Silence on the other end. Then, why didn't you file a report? Because I was afraid. But I'm willing to file one now if it helps your investigation. Another pause. That won't be necessary. Mr. Hale has declined to press charges against his attackers. And given your statement, I don't think we'll be pursuing this further. The detective's voice went quieter. But Ms. Whitmore, be careful who you accept protection from. Men like Lucien Moretti don't do favors without expecting something in return. The line went dead. Emma sat frozen at her desk, staring at the white rose. Lucien had done exactly what he'd promised. Made Travis afraid. Made him hurt the way Emma had been hurting. Made sure he'd never come near her again. And he'd done it within 12 hours of learning her name. Emma should have been horrified. Should have been calling lawyers or packing her bags or doing something other than sitting here feeling a dark, shameful surge of satisfaction. Travis had put his hands on her, and now he was in a hospital bed learning what consequences felt like. Her office door opened without warning. Lucien stepped inside and closed it behind him with quiet finality. He was wearing navy today, perfectly tailored, looking like he'd slept well and hadn't orchestrated a brutal assault in the middle of the night. Detective Chen called you. It wasn't a question. Emma met his eyes. Did you have Travis beaten? Yes. No hesitation, no excuses, just flat honesty. He could have died. He won't. Lucien moved closer. My people are precise. He'll recover in 6 weeks. He'll walk with a limp for 6 months, and he'll never forget what happens when someone touches what belongs to me. I don't belong to you. Don't you? The question hung between them like a challenge. Emma stood slowly, her pulse racing. You can't do things like this every time someone... I can. I will. And I'm not going to apologize for protecting you. Lucien stopped directly in front of her desk. But I need to know if you can live with that. Because this is who I am, Emma. I don't play by rules that allow men like Travis Hale to hurt women without consequence. You broke the law. I break laws every day. So do half the people in this building. So do the politicians and businessmen and socialites who smile at you in elevators. His voice stayed calm. The only difference is I'm honest about it. Emma's hands were shaking. She gripped the edge of her desk to hide it. What do you want from me? I want you to stop pretending you're horrified by what I did. Lucien's eyes pinned her in place. I saw your face when Detective Chen called. You weren't scared. You were relieved. That doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it honest. He moved around the desk slowly, deliberately, like he was giving her time to tell him to stop. Emma didn't tell him to stop. Lucien reached out and touched her jaw where the bruise had already started fading. His fingers were gentle, careful. You deserve to feel safe, and if that means I have to become the monster who makes you safe, then that's what I'll be. Emma's breathing had gone shallow. I barely know you. You know enough. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You know I notice things no one else sees. You know I keep my promises. And you know that when you're near me, you don't have to be afraid anymore. It was true. All of it. Standing this close to Lucien should have terrified Emma. He was dangerous, violent, criminal. But instead she just felt anchored, seen, protected. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. People will talk. Let them. I could lose everything. Or you could gain everything. Lucien's hand slid to the back of her neck, his fingers threading through her hair. Your choice, Emma. But make it now. Because once you step into this with me, there's no going back. Emma knew what the smart choice was. Walk away. Report him. Find a new job. Rebuild her life somewhere far from Lucien Moretti and his brutal empire. But when she looked into his storm-gray eyes, she didn't see a monster. She saw someone who'd noticed her pain and ended it without asking for permission or apologies. She saw someone who made her feel powerful instead of small. And she realized with sudden, terrifying clarity that she'd already made her choice the moment she'd told him she wanted Travis to be afraid. Kiss me. she said quietly. Lucien's eyes darkened. If I kiss you, you're mine, completely. No half measures. I know. He kissed her like he owned her, deep and possessive and absolutely certain. Emma's hands fisted in his suit jacket as the world narrowed to just the two of them, this moment, this choice. When Lucien finally pulled back, his voice was rough. You have no idea what you just started. Emma's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Then show me. The next 3 weeks rewrote Emma's entire existence. Lucien didn't hide their relationship, didn't pretend it was professional or casual or anything other than what it was, absolute possession. White roses appeared on Emma's desk every morning. Lucien's security escorted her everywhere. Employees who'd barely acknowledged her existence now treated her with careful, nervous respect. And at night, when the office emptied and the city lights burned through the windows, Lucien would pull her into his office and show her exactly what it meant to belong to someone who built empires on power and blood money. He taught her about the real empire hidden beneath Moretti Global's legitimate facade, the political leverage, the carefully cultivated relationships with people who operated in moral gray zones, the security teams that were really enforcers, the business deals that were really warnings. People think power comes from money, Lucien told her one night, his hand splayed possessively across her stomach as they stood at his office windows overlooking the city. But money is just a tool. Real power comes from knowing which threats are real and which ones are theater. And which is this? Emma gestured at the glittering skyline. Both. He kissed her throat. I'm the monster they're afraid of. But I'm also the king they need. Because without me, this city would tear itself apart. Emma tilted her head back against his shoulder. 3 weeks ago, she would have called that arrogance. Now she recognized it as simple truth. Lucien ruled New York's underworld with the same ruthless precision he applied to corporate mergers. And Emma was starting to understand her place in that world. Not as a victim, not as decoration, as a partner. I'm promoting you, Lucien said abruptly. Full strategic director, executive board seat, equal authority over company operations. Emma turned in his arms. That's insane. I'm 28 years old. I've been here 8 months, and you're smarter than half my board combined. You see patterns they miss. You understand numbers like they're a language everyone else forgot how to speak. His hands framed her face. I'm not giving you this because we're sleeping together. I'm giving you this because you've earned it, and because I want the world to know exactly what you mean to me. People will say I slept my way to the top. Let them. You and I know the truth. Emma searched his eyes. What if I fail? You won't. Lucien kissed her forehead. But if you do, we'll fail together. That night, Emma signed the paperwork, making her one of the youngest executives in Moretti Global's history, and she realized she'd stopped being afraid of what she was becoming. The engagement ring appeared on a Wednesday. Emma was reviewing acquisition reports when Lucien walked into her new corner office, 3 doors down from his, and set a black velvet box on her desk without preamble. Open it. Emma's heart stuttered. Lucien, open it. She did. The ring was platinum, simple, and absolutely stunning. A single diamond that caught the light like trapped starfire. Marry me. Lucien wasn't asking. He was stating fact. Emma's hands shook. We've known each other 3 weeks. 22 days. And I knew I wanted you 8 months ago. He moved around the desk and pulled her to her feet. I don't do anything halfway, Emma. You already live in my hotel suite. You already run half my empire. The only thing left is making it permanent. People get engaged after dating for years. I'm not people. Neither are you. His thumb traced her lower lip. Say yes. Emma knew this was reckless. Knew she should demand more time, more certainty, more of something rational and sane. But standing in Lucien's arms with his ring burning against her palm, she couldn't remember why any of that mattered. Yes. Lucien's smile was pure triumph. He slid the ring onto her finger, kissed her hard enough to make her dizzy, and then stepped back with dark satisfaction in his eyes. We're getting married in December, 3 weeks from now. Small ceremony, private estate, just us and the people who matter. Emma's pulse hammered. 3 weeks? I'm not waiting any longer than that. He straightened his cuffs with casual authority. The announcement goes out tomorrow. Legal will handle the contracts. And Emma, she looked up at him. Anyone who threatens you from this point forward isn't just threatening my fiancée. They're threatening my wife. And I protect what's mine absolutely. The possessiveness should have frightened her, but instead Emma just felt anchored, safe, chosen. Okay, she whispered. Lucien kissed her once more, then headed for the door. Before he left, he glanced back with something almost like vulnerability in his expression. I love you, he said quietly, in case that wasn't obvious. Then he was gone, leaving Emma standing in her corner office with a ring on her finger and the sudden dizzying realization that she'd fallen in love with the most dangerous man in New York, and she didn't regret it for a second. Worse, the package arrived on a Monday morning, 2 weeks before the wedding. Emma's assistant brought it into her office, looking pale. This just came for you, no return address. Security already scanned it. It's not dangerous, but what? I think you should open it alone. Emma's stomach tightened. She waited until her assistant left, then carefully opened the plain brown box. Photographs spilled across her desk. Hundreds of them. Emma leaving restaurants. Emma shopping. Emma walking through Central Park. Emma asleep in her hotel suite, photographed through the window with a long lens. Every moment of her life for the past 3 months, documented in horrifying detail. At the bottom of the box was a single typed note, "Leave Lucien Moretti or die beside him. Your choice ends in 7 days." Emma's hands went numb. The room tilted sideways. She grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and dialed Lucien's private line. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? Not a question, a statement. He could hear it in her voice. Someone's been watching me, following me. Lucien, there are photographs, hundreds of them. I'm coming to you. Lock your door. Don't let anyone in except me. The line went dead. Emma shoved the photographs back into the box with trembling hands and locked her office door. 90 seconds later, Lucien was there, appearing so fast she knew he must have run. He locked the door behind him and crossed to her desk in 3 strides. Show me. Emma handed him the box. She watched his face as he looked through the photographs, watched his expression go from controlled fury to something far colder and more dangerous. When he reached the note, his jaw clenched so hard Emma heard his teeth grind. Pack your things, he said quietly. I'm taking you to my estate. You're not staying in the city. Lucien's, this isn't a discussion. He looked at her with murder in his eyes. Someone has been stalking you for months. Someone close enough to photograph you through hotel windows, which means they have access, resources, and a plan. Emma's voice shook. Who would do this? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Lucien pulled out his phone and made a call. Vincent, someone sent Emma photographs, surveillance going back 3 months. I need every security feed reviewed, every delivery tracked, and a full threat assessment within the hour. He listened briefly, then added, and pull Travis Hale's records again, his family, known associates, anyone with motivation to target Emma. Emma's blood went cold. You think this is connected to Travis? I think men like Travis don't usually work alone. Lucien ended the call and pulled Emma against his chest, his arms locked around her like steel. You're safe, I promise, but we're not taking chances. If I leave the city, your enemies win. If you stay in the city and someone kills you, I become a monster this world has never seen. His voice went rough. I can't lose you, Emma. I won't. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Then we find whoever's behind this. Together. And we end them. Lucien stared at her for a long moment. Then something like pride flickered across his face. You're not afraid. I'm terrified. But I'm also done running. Emma's hands fisted in his shirt. You taught me that power comes from knowing which threats are real. This threat is real. So we treat it like one. We? We. She kissed him hard. I'm not hiding while you fight my battles. If someone wants to threaten me, they're going to learn exactly what happens when they threaten a Moretti. Lucien's smile was dark and devastating. You're going to be a terrifying wife. I learned from the best. He kissed her again, deeper this time, then pulled out his phone and started making calls that would mobilize his entire organization. And Emma stood beside him, watching her future husband transform from controlled businessman into something far more dangerous, and realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready for war. Within 2 hours, Lucian's estate outside the city had transformed into a war room. Emma stood at the windows of his study watching armed security patrol the grounds, while Lucian moved through the space like a predator calculating trajectories. His jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up, and there was something raw and dangerous in the way he moved now, like the polished businessman had been stripped away to reveal the weapon underneath. Vincent Calabrese, Lucian's head of security, spread surveillance photographs across the massive oak desk. He was ex-military, broad-shouldered, with scar tissue running along his jaw and eyes that had seen too much violence to be shocked by anything. 3 months of surveillance, Vincent said, his voice flat and precise. Photographer used professional equipment, long lenses, digital timestamps, coordinated coverage across multiple locations. This wasn't some amateur stalker. This was planned. Lucien's fingers traced the edge of one photograph. Emma sleeping, taken through her hotel window. His jaw was so tight, Emma could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. How did they get access to the peninsula? His voice came out quiet, deadly. Reviewing footage now, but whoever did this knew her schedule, her routines, her security patterns. Vincent pulled up another set of images on his tablet, and they weren't working alone. Look at the angles, multiple photographers, different positions. This was a coordinated operation. Emma's stomach churned. She'd spent 3 months thinking she was safe, protected, untouchable. But someone had been watching her every move, documenting her life like she was prey being studied before the kill. Travis Hale, she said quietly. Both men looked at her. You said men like him don't work alone. What did you find? Vincent glanced at Lucian, who nodded once. Vincent pulled up a file on his tablet. Travis Hale was hospitalized for 6 weeks after his assault. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, psychological trauma. He was released 4 weeks ago. Vincent swiped through records. But here's where it gets interesting. His medical bills, over $300,000, were paid in full by a trust fund managed by his estranged family. Father, Caleb Hale. Sister, Vanessa Hale. Emma's pulse quickened. I didn't know Travis had family with money. He doesn't talk about them. They cut him off 5 years ago after he was charged with assault in Boston. Case was dropped. Victim recanted. But the family disowned him anyway. Vincent pulled up photographs. Caleb Hale is a disgraced financier, got caught in an insider trading scandal 7 years ago, lost his firm, went underground. And Vanessa? He turned the tablet toward Emma. The woman in the photograph was beautiful in a cold, precise way. Blonde hair pulled tight, sharp cheekbones, eyes like chips of ice. She was standing outside a Manhattan restaurant, photographed 3 weeks ago. Vanessa Hale, Vincent continued, 32 years old, MBA from Wharton. Worked in private equity until she quit 18 months ago for undisclosed reasons. No current employment on record, but she's been spotted at multiple locations where Emma was photographed. Emma stared at the image. She's been following me? Or coordinating the people who are? Vincent swiped to another photo, Vanessa talking to a man in a parking garage. We're running facial recognition on everyone in her network, but if Travis told his family what happened and they blame you for his injuries, then they want revenge, Lucian finished coldly. Emma's hands clenched into fists. Let them come. I'm not hiding from some spoiled rich girl with a grudge. Emma, Lucian started. No. She turned to face him, her voice sharp with frustration. You said power comes from knowing which threats are real. This is real. So we handle it. Together. Lucien crossed the room in 3 strides and caught her face between his hands. His thumb traced her jaw where Travis's bruise had long since faded. You don't understand what people like the Hales are capable of. They don't fight clean. They don't play by rules. Neither do you. Exactly. Which is why I know how dangerous this is. His eyes searched hers. If they hurt you to get to me, they won't. Because you're going to teach me how to be dangerous too. Something shifted in Lucien's expression. Pride mixed with fear, mixed with the kind of possessive hunger that made Emma's breath catch. You really want this? His voice went rough. You want to learn how my world actually works? I already know how it works. You break bones and bury threats and make people disappear when they cross you. Emma's hands gripped his wrists. Now teach me how to do it myself. Vincent cleared his throat awkwardly. I'll give you 2 a minute. He left the study, closing the door with deliberate care. Lucien stared at Emma for a long moment. Then he kissed her, hard and claiming and absolutely certain. When he pulled back, his voice was low and dangerous. If I teach you this, there's no going back. You become what I am, and people will hate you for it. People already hate me for marrying you. At least this way I'll deserve it. Lucien's laugh was dark and genuine. You're going to burn this city down, aren't you? Only the parts that need burning. He kissed her again, softer this time, then stepped back and straightened his sleeves with renewed focus. All right, then we start now. Vincent? The door opened immediately. Vincent had obviously been waiting just outside. Bring everything you have on the Hale family, Lucien said. Financial records, property holdings, known associates, business dealings. I want their entire network mapped within 24 hours. Already in progress. Vincent set his tablet on the desk. But boss, there's something else you need to see. He pulled up a series of bank transfers. 3 days ago, Caleb Hale moved $2 million through a shell corporation into accounts belonging to 5 different people. We've identified 3 so far. Faces appeared on the screen. Emma recognized one immediately. That's Marcus Chen, she said, her voice tight. He used to work in our acquisitions department. Lucien fired him 6 months ago for embezzlement, Lucien finished, his expression going cold. He stole $500,000 from client accounts. I gave him the option of repaying it quietly or facing criminal charges. He repaid it. Apparently, he's still holding a grudge. Vincent pulled up another face. This is Sarah Voss, former executive assistant to your CFO. You fired her 4 months ago. Sexual harassment complaint from 3 female employees, Lucien said flatly. She was creating a hostile work environment. What's her connection to the Hales? Unclear, but she's been photographed meeting with Vanessa twice in the past month. Vincent pulled up the last face. And this is Daniel Cross. He's a contractor, specializes in surveillance, corporate espionage, blackmail, very expensive, very discreet. Emma's stomach turned. They hired a professional to follow me. They hired a network. Lucien's voice had gone dangerously quiet. 3 disgruntled former employees with inside knowledge of our operations, plus a surveillance expert, plus whoever else Caleb Hale is paying. This isn't revenge. This is a coordinated attack. On you or on me? Emma asked. Both. Lucien turned to face her fully. They're going to use you to destroy me, probably during the wedding. Maximum public exposure, maximum humiliation, maximum damage. Vincent nodded grimly. It's a smart play. Kill Emma at your own wedding and you either fall apart or you retaliate so viciously that law enforcement finally has enough evidence to come after you. Either way, the empire collapses. Emma's pulse hammered, but her voice stayed steady. So what do we do? Lucien was quiet for a long moment, his mind clearly working through scenarios and contingencies. Then he said, We let them think they're winning, and then we destroy them all at once. How? By giving them exactly what they want. He looked at Vincent. Cancel the wedding. Emma's heart stopped. What? Not actually cancel it, but make it look like I'm pulling back. Like I'm afraid. Like Emma and I are fighting because of the threats. Lucien's eyes gleamed with cold calculation. If the Hales think they've driven a wedge between us, they'll get reckless, make mistakes, show us everyone in their network. And then? Emma's voice came out tight. Then we take them apart, piece by piece. Lucien moved closer, his hand sliding to the back of her neck. But it means we have to sell the fiction. In public, we're falling apart. Behind closed doors, we're hunting. Emma understood immediately. People will think you're abandoning me. Yes. Your reputation will take damage. I don't care about my reputation. I care about keeping you alive. His thumb traced her jaw. But Emma, this means you have to trust me completely. No doubts, no second guessing, because I'm going to do things that will hurt you. And you have to know it's all strategy. She searched his eyes. What kind of things? I'm going to pull your security. Make it look like I'm withdrawing protection. The Hales will see an opening and they'll move fast. His voice went rough. You'll be exposed, vulnerable. Everything in you will scream that I've betrayed you. But you haven't. No, because Vincent's team will be shadowing you from a distance. We'll track everyone who makes contact, everyone who watches you, everyone who reports back to the Hales. And when we have the full network, we end them completely. Emma's breathing had gone shallow. This was insane, reckless, exactly the kind of plan that could get her killed if anything went wrong. But looking into Lucien's storm-gray eyes, she saw absolute certainty. He would die before he let anything happen to her. Okay, she said quietly. I trust you. Lucien pulled her against his chest, his arms locking around her like he could physically shield her from what was coming. 2 weeks, he murmured against her hair. 2 weeks of playing broken. Then we strike. Emma closed her eyes and tried to steady her racing heart. She was about to become bait in a trap designed to catch monsters, and she was terrified. The performance started the next morning. Emma returned to the city alone. No security detail, no armed escort, just a car service that dropped her at Moretti Global like nothing had changed. Inside the building, people whispered. Their eyes followed her with the kind of hungry curiosity that came before scandal. By noon, the rumors were everywhere. Lucien Moretti had thrown his fiancée out. They'd fought viciously about the threats. Emma had demanded more protection. Lucien had refused. The engagement was on the verge of collapse. None of it was true. But in the world of corporate gossip, truth didn't matter half as much as drama. Emma sat in her office pretending to work while her stomach churned with anxiety. Every person who walked past her door felt like a potential threat. Every unexpected sound made her pulse spike. But she kept her expression calm, professional, like nothing was wrong. At 2 p.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. I heard about you and Lucien. I'm sorry. Emma stared at the screen. The number wasn't in her contacts, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. She typed back carefully. Who is this? Unknown number, a friend. We used to work together. I left the company a few months ago, but I still care about you. If you need help getting away from Lucien, I know people who can protect you. Emma's blood went cold. This was it. The Hales network making contact. She glanced at the corner of her office where Vincent had installed a hidden camera before she'd left the estate. They were watching, recording, building their case. Emma, how did you get this number? Unknown number. Does it matter? You're in danger. Lucien Moretti is a dangerous man and you need to get away from him before it's too late. Emma, I don't need protection from Lucien. Unknown number. Yes, you do, and I can prove it. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on the corner of 5th and 42nd, 10 a.m. Come alone. The text thread went silent. Emma set her phone down with shaking hands and stared at nothing for 30 seconds. Then she opened her laptop and sent an encrypted message to the private server Vincent had set up. Contact made. Meeting requested tomorrow 10 a.m., 5th and 42nd. The response came back in seconds. Vincent, we'll have eyes on you. Stay calm. Follow the script. Emma closed the laptop and tried to slow her breathing. This was just the beginning. Months. That night, Lucien didn't come to her hotel suite. Emma knew it was part of the plan, knew they had to maintain the appearance of a relationship in collapse. But lying alone in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling while Manhattan glittered outside her windows, she felt the first real thread of doubt creeping in. What if something went wrong? What if the Hales moved faster than Lucien anticipated? What if she ended up dead in some warehouse because they'd underestimated how ruthless Vanessa Hale could be? Her phone rang at midnight. Unknown number. Emma answered without thinking. Hello? Breathing on the other end. Then a woman's voice, cold and precise. Emma Whitmore. We haven't met, but I think it's time we did. Emma's pulse spiked. Who is this? Someone who knows exactly what Lucien Moretti is, and someone who can help you survive him. A pause. My name is Vanessa Hale, and I think you and I need to talk. Emma's mind raced. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. Vanessa wasn't supposed to make direct contact. She was supposed to work through intermediaries, stay hidden, keep her hands clean. I don't know who you are, Emma said carefully, but don't lie. You know exactly who I am. Just like you know my brother is in physical therapy learning to walk again because your fiancé had him beaten within an inch of his life. Vanessa's voice stayed calm, controlled. Travis made a mistake. He hurt you. He deserved consequences. But what Lucien did went far beyond justice. It was cruelty. And it's the same cruelty he'll eventually turn on you. Lucien has never hurt me. Not yet. But he will. Men like him always do. Vanessa's tone shifted, became almost sympathetic. I know what you're thinking. You think you're different, special. That he loves you so much he'll never hurt you the way he hurts everyone else. But Emma, love doesn't stop men like Lucien Moretti from being monsters. It just makes them better at hiding it. Emma's throat tightened. Why are you calling me? Because I want to offer you a way out, before it's too late. A beat of silence. Meet with my associate tomorrow. Listen to what they have to say. And then decide if you really want to marry a man who solves problems with violence. The line went dead. Emma sat frozen in the darkness, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was still part of the plan. Vanessa making contact was exactly what they'd predicted. But hearing the woman's voice, calm, rational, almost kind, made something twist uncomfortably in Emma's chest. What if Vanessa was right? Not about Lucien being a monster. Emma had already made peace with what Lucien was, but about what would happen when his violence eventually turned in her direction. She grabbed her phone and texted the encrypted server. Emma, Vanessa Hale just called me directly. Pushed the meeting tomorrow, trying to separate me from Lucien psychologically. Vincent, expected. Stay the course. Emma, what if she's right? What if Lucien eventually... Vincent, he won't. I've worked for him for 8 years, seen him destroy rivals, ruin enemies, break men twice his size. But I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. He'd burn the world before he hurt you. Emma wanted to believe that, needed to believe it. But alone in the dark, with Vanessa's words echoing in her head, doubt crept in like smoke under a door. None. The coffee shop was crowded when Emma arrived at 9:55 a.m. She ordered an Americano and found a table near the windows, her pulse hammering as she scanned the room for threats. Vincent's team was out there somewhere, watching, recording, ready to intervene if things went wrong. But Emma had never felt more alone. At exactly 10 a.m., a woman slid into the chair across from her. Sarah Voss, former executive assistant, fired for harassment, now working for the Hales. She was blonde, polished, wearing expensive clothes that probably came from the $2 million Caleb Hale had distributed to his network. Her smile was warm, sympathetic, completely fake. Emma, thank you for meeting me. Emma kept her voice neutral. You said you could help. I can, but first I need you to understand something. Sarah leaned forward slightly. I worked at Moretti Global for 3 years. I saw things, heard things. Lucien Moretti is not the man you think he is. Then who is he? A sociopath with unlimited resources and no moral compass. Sarah pulled out her phone and turned it toward Emma. Look. The screen showed surveillance footage, grainy, black and white, time-stamped 6 months ago. It showed Lucien in a warehouse, watching while 2 men beat someone bloody on the concrete floor. Emma's stomach turned, but she kept her expression blank. That could be anyone. It's Marcus Chen, former acquisitions director. Lucien accused him of embezzlement and made him repay $500,000. But that wasn't enough. A week after Marcus paid back every cent, Lucien had him tortured anyway, because he could, because he wanted to make an example. Emma stared at the footage. She didn't know if it was real or fabricated, didn't know if Marcus deserved what happened or if Lucien had gone too far. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was a test. Why are you showing me this? Emma asked quietly. Because you need to see who you're marrying before it's too late to escape. Sarah's expression turned earnest. I know you think he loves you, but Emma, men like Lucien don't love. They possess, they control, and eventually they destroy. Sounds like you have personal experience. Sarah's jaw tightened. I saw what he did to women in that company, how he discarded them when they stopped being useful. I tried to protect people and he fired me for it. You were fired for sexual harassment. That's what he told everyone. The truth is I knew too much about his operations and he wanted me gone. Sarah's voice dropped lower. Emma, there are 5 of us now. 5 people who escaped Lucian's control and want to help others do the same. We have resources, safe houses, legal protection. If you want out, we can get you out." Emma let the silence stretch for 5 long seconds. Then she said, "What do you want in return? Information? Access? Help bringing Lucien down." Sarah's eyes gleamed. "He's untouchable as long as everyone's afraid of him. But if his own fiancée turns against him, if you testify about what you've seen, what you know, we can finally stop him." There it was. The real agenda. They didn't want to save Emma. They wanted to use her to destroy Lucien. Emma picked up her coffee and took a slow sip, using the moment to steady herself. Every instinct screamed to throw the coffee in Sarah's face and walk out. But that would break cover, ruin the plan. So instead she said, "I need time to think about this." "You don't have time. The wedding is in 12 days. Once you marry him, you're trapped. Legally, emotionally, financially. There's no escape." "Then I'll decide before the wedding." "Emma, I said I need time." Emma stood, her legs somehow steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Don't contact me again. If I want your help, I'll reach out." She walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. The moment Emma was outside, she turned down an alley and let herself shake. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. Before she could dial, a black car pulled up beside her and the back door opened. Vincent was inside. "Get in." Emma slid into the seat and the car pulled away from the curb immediately. Vincent handed her a bottle of water. "You did good. Really good." Emma's laugh came out shaky. "I thought I was going to throw up on her." "You look calm, professional, exactly what we needed." Vincent pulled up footage on his tablet. "We recorded everything. Sarah Voss just confessed to coordinating with multiple people to take down Lucien. That's conspiracy. And showing you that warehouse footage, which is real by the way, Marcus Chen was tortured, proves they've been conducting illegal surveillance of Lucien's operations." Emma stared at the tablet. "Was it real? Did Lucien really torture Marcus after he repaid the money?" Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Marcus Chen didn't just embezzle $500,000. He stole it from a client's pension fund, ruined 30 families. Lucien made him pay it back and then made sure he never worked in finance again. Was it legal? No. Was it justice? Depends on who you ask." Emma closed her eyes. This was her life now. Questions without clean answers. Justice that looked like revenge. Right and wrong bleeding together until she couldn't tell the difference anymore. "Where's Lucien?" she asked. "Estate, coordinating the next phase." Vincent glanced at her. "You sure you want to keep going? Because Sarah was right about one thing. Once you marry him, there's no going back." "I know." "And you're still sure?" Emma opened her eyes and met Vincent's gaze directly. "Lucien is the only person who's ever made me feel powerful instead of powerless. He's violent and ruthless and criminal, but he's also the only man who's ever seen me as an equal. So yes, I'm sure." Vincent nodded slowly. "Then let's finish this." The next 8 days were psychological warfare. Emma maintained the fiction of a relationship in crisis. She stayed at the hotel alone, ignored Lucien's calls in public, let people see her crying in the executive bathroom, played the role of a woman questioning everything, and one by one, the Hales network emerged from the shadows. Marcus Chen approached her outside the office, offering sympathy and secret files. Daniel Cross, the surveillance expert, sent encrypted messages with proof of Lucie's criminal activities. Another former employee, someone Emma barely remembered, showed up at her gym with stories of abuse and corruption. Each contact was documented, recorded, added to Vincent's growing case file. But the strain was killing Emma from the inside out. She hadn't seen Lucien in person for 8 days, hadn't felt his arms around her or heard his voice except through brief, cold text messages that were obviously meant for anyone monitoring her phone. The doubt that started as a whisper had grown into a roar. What if this was all real? What if Lucien actually was pulling away? What if the threats had made him realize she was a liability and now he was looking for an exit? On the 9th day, Emma broke. She bypassed Vincent's security, took a private car to Lucien's estate, and walked through the front door like she owned the place. Lucien was in his study. When he looked up and saw her standing there, something cracked in his controlled expression. "Emma, don't." She closed the distance between them. "Don't say anything. Just, she kissed him desperately, her hands fisting in his shirt, her entire body shaking with 9 days of fear and doubt and loneliness. Lucien caught her against his chest, his arms crushing her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he murmured against her hair. "I'm so sorry. I know this has been— I thought you changed your mind." Emma's voice broke. "I thought you decided I wasn't worth the risk." "Emma." Lucien pulled back just enough to frame her face with his hands. His eyes were fierce, absolute. "I would rather die than let anything happen to you. These 9 days have been the worst of my life because I couldn't hold you, couldn't protect you, couldn't make sure you were safe. But it's almost over. 3 more days, and we end this." 3 days? "The Hales are planning something for the wedding. We've intercepted communications. They're bringing in outside contractors, moving money, coordinating with their network. They think you're vulnerable and I'm distracted. They're going to make their move during the ceremony." Emma's pulse quickened. "What kind of move?" "Kidnapping, probably." "Use you as leverage to destroy me publicly." Lucien's jaw clenched. "But we'll be ready. Vincent's team will be positioned throughout the venue. The moment they make contact, we take them all. And then they disappear, permanently." He kissed her forehead. "No more threats, no more fear. Just you and me and the empire we're building together." Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that in 3 days this nightmare would be over and she could finally breathe. But standing in Lucien's arms, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go catastrophically wrong. Mafia. The night before the wedding, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in the hotel suite, alone again for the final performance, and stared at the ceiling while her mind raced through every possible disaster scenario. What if Vincent's team missed something? What if the Hales had backup plans they hadn't anticipated? What if Emma ended up dead because she'd trusted too much and seen too late? At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Last chance, Emma. Walk away tonight or die tomorrow." Her blood went cold. She grabbed the phone and texted Vincent's encrypted server. "Emma, another threat. Direct. They know the wedding is tomorrow." No response. Emma tried calling Vincent. Straight to voicemail. She tried Lucien. Same thing. Panic started creeping up her throat. She threw off the covers and grabbed her laptop, trying to access the secure server Vincent had set up. Access denied. Emma's hands started shaking. Something was wrong. Vincent wouldn't go dark the night before the operation. Lucien wouldn't ignore her calls. Unless— Her hotel room door crashed open. 3 men in tactical gear stormed inside before Emma could scream. One of them grabbed her, clapping a hand over her mouth while another zip-tied her wrists. Emma fought viciously, kicking and thrashing and trying to bite, but they were professionals. Trained. Within 30 seconds, she was restrained and being carried toward the service elevator. Where the hell was Vincent's team? Where was Lucien's security? Where was anyone? The men dragged her into a van waiting in the hotel's underground garage. Emma's mind raced as they shoved her into the back and slammed the doors. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Hales were supposed to move tomorrow during the wedding when Vincent's team was in position. Not tonight. Not like this. Unless Lucien had been wrong. Unless the Hales had anticipated the trap and struck first. Unless Emma was about to die alone in the dark because she'd trusted a monster who promised her protection he couldn't actually deliver. The van pulled away from the hotel, and Emma realized with cold, absolute terror that she might have just made the biggest mistake of her life. The van drove for 47 minutes. Emma counted every second, her wrists burning where the zip ties cut into skin, her breathing shallow and controlled through the cloth bag they'd shoved over her head. She couldn't see, couldn't orient herself, could only feel the vehicle's movements, turns, stops, acceleration, and try to map their route in her mind. When the van finally stopped, rough hands dragged her out into cold night air that tasted like salt water and industrial decay. The Hudson River, Emma thought, somewhere along the waterfront where abandoned warehouses rotted into the shoreline. They walked her across gravel, then concrete, then shoved her down into a metal chair. The bag came off her head in one violent motion. Emma blinked against sudden fluorescent brightness. She was in a warehouse, massive, empty, filled with the smell of rust and standing water, shipping containers stacked against far walls, a single table in front of her with 2 chairs, and standing in the shadows beyond the lights, at least a dozen figures watching in silence. One of them stepped forward into the light. Vanessa Hale looked exactly like her photographs. Cold, beautiful, precisely controlled. She wore tailored black pants and a silk blouse, her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it made her face look skeletal. Her eyes were the same pale blue as her brother Travis, but where his had been filled with rage, hers held something far more dangerous. Calculation. Emma Whitmore. Vanessa's voice was soft, almost kind. I'm sorry it had to be like this. I really am. Emma said nothing. Her mind was racing through every self-defense technique Lucien had taught her over the past weeks, every exit strategy Vincent had drilled into her head. But with her wrists bound and at least 12 hostiles in the room, her options were limited to staying alive long enough for rescue. If rescue was coming. Vanessa pulled out the chair across from Emma and sat with elegant precision. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking Lucien will come for you, that his security team is tracking you right now, that Vincent Calabrese is mobilizing resources as we speak. She smiled. They're not, because 3 hours ago I paid Vincent Calabrese $5 million to walk away. Emma's blood turned to ice. You're lying. Am I? Vanessa pulled out her phone and turned it toward Emma. The screen showed a bank transfer confirmation. $5 million deposited into an offshore account registered to Vincent Calabrese. Timestamp, 11:47 p.m. Vincent has worked for Lucien for 8 years, but everyone has a price, and mine was high enough to make him realize that loyalty to a sinking ship isn't worth dying for. Emma's stomach lurched. That doesn't prove anything. Anyone can fake a transfer. You're right, so let me show you something else. Vanessa swiped to a video file and pressed play. The footage showed Vincent in a parking garage talking to a man Emma didn't recognize. The audio was crystal clear. $5 million, clean, offshore. I walk away tonight, disable his security protocols, and make sure Emma's protection detail is pulled for routine maintenance. Vincent's voice. Unmistakable. But if anything happens to her, if she dies, the deal's off, and I put a bullet in your boss. Understood. The girl stays alive. We just need her as leverage. The video ended. Emma stared at the blank screen, her mind refusing to process what she'd just seen. Vincent had been with Lucien for 8 years. He'd protected Emma, trained her, reassured her that Lucien would never hurt her. He'd looked her in the eyes 3 days ago and told her to trust the plan, and he'd sold her out for $5 million. No, Emma's voice came out hoarse. That's not... Vincent wouldn't... Vincent is a mercenary, Emma. He works for whoever pays him, and I paid him more than Lucien ever did. Vanessa leaned forward, her expression almost sympathetic. You trusted the wrong people. Put your faith in men who only care about power and money. And now you're here, alone, with no one coming to save you. Emma's wrist twisted against the zip ties, testing their strength. Pain flared up her arms, but the plastic didn't give. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Justice for my brother. Vanessa's voice stayed calm, but something dark flickered behind her eyes. Travis made mistakes. He hurt you. He deserved consequences. But Lucien didn't give him consequences. He gave him torture. 6 weeks in the hospital, permanent nerve damage, psychological trauma that will follow him for the rest of his life. That wasn't justice. That was sadism. Your brother broke into my apartment and beat me unconscious, and Lucien destroyed him for it. Then he took you, made you complicit in his empire, turned you into another weapon in his arsenal. Vanessa stood and began pacing slowly. You think you chose this life, but Emma, Lucien has been manipulating you from the moment you walked into his building. The job promotion, the protection, the engagement, none of it was love, it was strategy. He saw a smart woman who could be useful, and he made sure you'd never leave. Emma's throat tightened. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Tell me something. Did Lucien ever mention that he had your apartment watched for 3 months before Travis attacked you? The world tilted sideways. What? Lucien knew Travis was dangerous, knew he was escalating. He had surveillance on your building from the moment you started dating him. Vanessa pulled out another phone and showed Emma photographs, her apartment building taken from multiple angles, time-stamped months ago. Lucian watched Travis stalk you, watched him threaten you, and he did nothing because he was waiting for the perfect moment to intervene, waiting for Travis to hurt you badly enough that you'd run straight into Lucian's arms. Emma couldn't breathe. That's not true. It's completely true. Ask yourself, how did Lucian know about the bruise the morning after Travis hit you? How did he notice it so quickly? Because he'd been watching, waiting. And when Travis finally gave him the excuse he needed, Lucian swooped in like your savior. Vanessa's voice turned sharp. He let you get hurt, Emma, deliberately, so he could rescue you and make you dependent on him. No. But even as Emma said it, doubt crept in like poison. Lucian had noticed the bruise immediately, had known exactly what to do, who to call, how to mobilize resources within minutes, had moved with the precision of someone who'd already planned everything. What if it hadn't been instinct? What if it had been strategy? I know this is hard to hear, Vanessa continued, her tone softening into false sympathy. You thought you'd found someone who loved you, protected you, made you powerful. But Emma, Lucian Moretti doesn't love anyone. He collects assets, and you became his most valuable one the moment you proved you could run his empire as effectively as he does. Emma's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. If that's true, then why would he care if you kill me? I'm just an asset. He can find another. Because killing you destroys his reputation, makes him look weak, proves he can't protect what's his. Vanessa leaned against the table, studying Emma like a specimen under glass. That's why we're not going to kill you. We're going to give you a choice. What choice? Walk away. Publicly. Tell the world that Lucian Moretti is a monster who manipulated and controlled you. Testify against him. Help us dismantle his empire piece by piece. Vanessa's eyes gleamed. Do that, and you live. You get a new identity, a new life, money to start over somewhere far away from New York. Or refuse, and we make sure everyone knows you were complicit in every crime Lucian ever committed. You'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Emma stared at her. You're insane. I'm not testifying against... Then you're going to prison. Because in about 30 minutes, FBI agents are going to raid this warehouse. They'll find you here, surrounded by evidence of Lucian's criminal operations, drugs, weapons, financial records, everything. And you'll be arrested as an accessory to organized crime. Emma's heart stopped. What? Vincent didn't just give us access to you. He gave us access to Lucian's entire operation, every illegal deal, every off-books transaction, every body that was never found. We've been building a federal case for 3 months, and tonight it all comes crashing down. Vanessa checked her watch. The FBI is en route now, so you have 28 minutes to decide. Cooperate and walk away clean, or stay loyal to Lucian and spend the next 2 decades in a cell. Emma's mind spun. This couldn't be happening. Lucian had promised her protection, had promised her power, had promised her a life where she'd never have to be afraid again. But if Vincent had really betrayed them, if the FBI was really coming, then everything Lucian had built was about to collapse, and Emma would go down with it. You're bluffing, Emma said, her voice shaking despite her efforts to control it. Vanessa smiled. Am I? She gestured to one of the figures in the shadows. A man stepped forward carrying a laptop. He set it on the table and turned the screen toward Emma. Live news footage. Multiple federal vehicles pulling up to Lucian's estate, agents in tactical gear storming the property. Emma watched in numb horror as the camera zoomed in on Lucian being led out in handcuffs, his face expressionless but his eyes burning with fury. The news anchor's voice filtered through the laptop speakers. Unprecedented raid on the estate of billionaire Lucian Moretti, CEO of Moretti Global Holdings. Sources indicate multiple federal charges including racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and... Vanessa closed the laptop. 26 minutes, Emma. What's it going to be? Boss. Emma's hands were numb. She didn't know if it was from the zip ties cutting off circulation or from the shock flooding her system. Didn't know if she was still breathing or if her lungs had just forgotten how to work. Lucian was in custody. His empire was collapsing. And Emma was sitting in a warehouse with the people who'd orchestrated it all, being offered a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Betray Lucian or go to prison. I need to think, Emma said hoarsely. No, you don't. You need to survive. Vanessa pulled out a document and slid it across the table. This is a cooperation agreement. You sign it, you testify against Lucien, and the FBI grants you full immunity. You walk away with your freedom and your life. Emma stared at the document without reading it. Her mind was racing through everything that had happened over the past 3 weeks. The threats, the surveillance, the plan to draw out the Hales network. It had all been real. But Lucien's plan, the trap he'd promised would protect her, had been dismantled by his own head of security. Vincent had sold them out, and now Emma was alone. Why? Emma's voice cracked. Why go to all this trouble? You could have just killed me, made it look like an accident. Why the elaborate setup? Because killing you makes Lucien a martyr, a grieving fiancé who lost his love to violence. People sympathize with that. They forget his crimes and remember his pain. Vanessa's expression hardened. But if you turn against him, if his own fiancée exposes him as a manipulative monster, then he has nothing left. No empire, no reputation, no legacy, just a life sentence in federal prison. Emma's breath came in shallow gasps. And if I refuse, then you go down with him. The FBI has enough evidence to prove you were actively involved in his operations. You'll be charged as an accomplice. And Emma... Vanessa leaned closer, her voice dropping to something almost gentle. Women don't survive prison the way men do, especially not women associated with men like Lucien. You'll be a target every single day for the rest of your life. The warehouse fell silent except for the distant sound of water dripping somewhere in the darkness. Emma's mind screamed at her to stall, to find a way out, to hold on until what? Lucien was in federal custody. Vincent had betrayed them. There was no rescue coming, no last-minute save, no moment where the doors would crash open and Lucien's men would flood in like avenging angels. She was alone, completely, utterly alone. And she had 23 minutes to decide whether to save herself by destroying the man she loved. I want to see the evidence, Emma said quietly. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. The evidence against Lucien? Yes. If I'm going to testify, I need to know exactly what I'm testifying about. Vanessa studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded to the man with the laptop. He pulled up files and turned the screen toward Emma. Financial records showing money laundering through shell corporations. Recorded phone calls discussing illegal acquisitions and intimidation tactics. Surveillance footage of Lucien's enforcers carrying out beatings and kidnappings. Witness statements from people who'd been threatened, extorted, or paid off. And photographs. So many photographs. Bodies in warehouses. Rivals who'd disappeared. Politicians who'd been blackmailed. Business partners who'd died in convenient accidents. Emma stared at the screen, her stomach churning. She'd known Lucien was dangerous, had accepted that he operated outside the law. But seeing it all laid out like this, years of violence and corruption and cold-blooded calculation, made something crack inside her chest. How much of what Vanessa said was true? Had Lucien really been watching her apartment? Had he really let Travis hurt her just so he could swoop in and play savior? Had everything been manipulation from the beginning? I can see you're starting to understand, Vanessa said softly. Lucien Moretti didn't fall in love with you, Emma. He identified you as a valuable asset, and he acquired you, just like he acquires everything else. Emma's throat closed. She wanted to scream that Vanessa was wrong, wanted to defend Lucien, to believe that what they had was real. But looking at years of evidence showing exactly who Lucien was and what he was capable of, Emma couldn't ignore the possibility that she'd been played from the very beginning, that the woman who'd felt powerful and chosen and loved was really just another pawn in a monster's game. 15 minutes, Vanessa said. What's your answer? Emma closed her eyes. She thought about the first time Lucien had touched her face and asked who'd hurt her. The way he'd looked at her like she mattered. The way he'd made her feel safe for the first time in months. Had it all been an act? She thought about the white roses that appeared on her desk every morning. The way Lucien held her at night like she was something precious. The vulnerability in his voice when he'd said he loved her. Had it all been strategy? She thought about the ring on her finger, platinum and starfire, a promise of forever. Had it all been a lie? Emma. Vanessa's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. I know you want to believe he loves you, but look at the evidence. Look at what he is. And ask yourself, would a man who truly loved you let you walk into this situation blind? Emma opened her eyes and realized Vanessa was right about one thing. Lucien had taught her about power, about strategy, about how to see through manipulation and identify real threats. So she looked at the woman across from her, perfectly controlled, strategically sympathetic, offering salvation with one hand while holding a knife behind her back. And Emma saw the truth. "You're wrong about one thing," Emma said quietly. Vanessa tilted her head. "What's that?" "You think Lucien let me walk into this blind. But he didn't." Emma's voice steadied. "He taught me exactly how people like you operate, how you use truth mixed with lies to make your target doubt everything, how you create time pressure to force bad decisions, how you offer salvation while actually tightening the noose." Vanessa's expression flickered, just for a second, but Emma caught it. "Everything you've shown me could be real," Emma continued. "Lucien probably did watch my apartment, probably did wait for the right moment to intervene, because that's who he is, a strategist who plans 10 moves ahead. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love me. It just means he loved me before I knew to love him back." "Emma, Iki, and the FBI raid? The cooperation agreement? The 20-minute deadline?" Emma's lips curved into something cold. "If the FBI was really coming, you wouldn't need me to sign anything right now. You'd wait until I was actually in custody and desperate, but you're pushing because you need my signature before something happens, before someone arrives who's going to ruin your entire plan." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Emma leaned forward despite the zip ties cutting into her wrists. "So here's my answer. Go to hell." For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Vanessa's carefully controlled mask cracked. "You stupid girl." Her voice turned vicious. "You really think Lucien is coming for you? Vincent sold him out. The FBI has him. His empire is gone, and you just signed your own death warrant. Then kill me." Emma's voice didn't shake. "Because I'm not giving you the satisfaction of destroying him." Vanessa stared at her with something like rage and respect mixed together. Then she stood abruptly and gestured to the men in the shadows. "Put her in the container. We'll decide what to do with her after." The warehouse lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed everything. Emma heard shouting, movement, the sound of metal scraping concrete. Someone grabbed her chair and dragged her sideways. She hit the ground hard, her shoulders slamming into concrete as zip-tied hands made it impossible to catch herself. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness in strobing chaos. Emma rolled sideways, trying to find cover, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Bullets sparked off metal. Someone screamed. Glass shattered somewhere above. Then a hand closed around her arm and dragged her behind a shipping container. "Stay down!" Vincent's voice. Emma's mind went blank with shock. You betrayed—" "I did no such thing. Now shut up and let me get these off." He pulled out a knife and cut through the zip ties in one motion. Blood rushed back into Emma's hands in painful pins and needles. "But the video, the bank transfer, fake. All of it. We fed Vanessa exactly what she wanted to see." Vincent pulled out a gun and checked the magazine with practiced efficiency. "Lucien's not in custody. The FBI isn't raiding his estate. And I sure as hell didn't sell you out for $5 million. Emma's relief was so overwhelming she thought she might throw up. "Then what?" "Later. Right now, we need to get you out of here before—" An explosion rocked the far side of the warehouse. The remaining lights flickered back on, emergency backups casting everything in red. Through the smoke and chaos, Emma saw Lucien's security team flooding through every entrance, moving with military precision. And walking through the main doors like an avenging storm was Lucien himself. He was wearing tactical gear, carrying a weapon Emma didn't recognize, and his face was set in an expression of absolute murder. His eyes scanned the warehouse in seconds, cataloging threats and calculating trajectories. Then his gaze landed on Emma. For half a second, something human flickered across his face, relief so profound it looked like pain. Then the mask slammed back down and he was moving, covering ground with lethal purpose. "Get her out," he ordered Vincent without breaking stride. "I'll handle the rest." "Boss?" "That's an order." Vincent grabbed Emma's arm and pulled her toward a side exit. But Emma yanked free. No, I'm not leaving. Emma, I said no. She looked past Vincent to where Lucien was advancing on the table where Vanessa still stood, surrounded now by 3 of her people with weapons drawn. This ends tonight, and I'm going to watch it end. Vincent looked like he wanted to argue. Then he sighed and handed her a spare weapon. Stay behind me, and if I say run, you run. Understood? Emma took the gun with shaking hands. Understood. They moved back into the main warehouse space, staying in cover behind containers and equipment. Around them, Lucien's team was systematically subduing the Hale's people. Quick, brutal, efficient. At the center of it all, Lucien stood facing Vanessa with the cold precision of an executioner. It's over, he said quietly. Vanessa laughed. It sounded unhinged. Over? You think this is over? We have everything we need to destroy you. Evidence, witnesses, federal cooperation. You have nothing! Lucien's voice cut through her hysteria like ice. The evidence is fabricated. The witnesses will recant. And the only federal cooperation happening tonight is the arrest warrant I had issued for you 30 minutes ago. Vanessa's face went white. That's impossible. Is it? You thought you were playing me, but Vanessa... Lucien's smile was terrifying. I've been playing you since the moment you made contact with Emma. Every phone call, every threat, every member of your network. I knew about all of it, because Vincent didn't betray me. He fed you exactly what I told him to feed you. And you believed it because you wanted so badly to believe you'd finally outsmarted me. Emma watched understanding dawn across Vanessa's face, the horror of realizing she'd been manipulated from the beginning. That every move she'd made had been anticipated and countered, that she'd walked straight into a trap designed specifically for her. You can't do this, Vanessa whispered. I have lawyers, resources. My father, Your father is currently being arrested for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, along with Marcus Chen, Sarah Voss, Daniel Cross, and 12 other members of your network. Lucien moved closer. You came after what was mine, Vanessa, and I don't forgive that. Vanessa's hand moved toward something at her belt. Emma saw it happen in slow motion, saw the weapon Vanessa was reaching for, saw Lucien's team reacting, but not fast enough, saw the trajectory that would put a bullet straight through Lucien's chest. She didn't think. Emma raised the gun Vincent had given her and fired. The shot cracked through the warehouse like thunder. Vanessa's weapon clattered to the concrete. She stared down at her bleeding shoulder in shock, then up at Emma with pure hatred. I told you, Emma said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. I'm not letting you destroy him, or me, or anything we've built. Lucien turned slowly to look at Emma. His eyes were unreadable. Then he smiled, genuine and devastating and full of dark pride. That's my girl. Vanessa collapsed to her knees, clutching her shoulder. Lucien's men moved in immediately, restraining her and calling for medical attention. Within minutes, the warehouse was secured. Every member of the Hale's network either in custody or fleeing into the night where more of Lucien's people were waiting. It was over. Emma stood in the middle of the chaos, still holding the gun, still shaking with adrenaline, and realized she'd just shot someone, had pulled the trigger without hesitation to protect the man she loved, had become exactly what Lucien had been training her to become. Dangerous. Lucien crossed the distance between them and gently took the weapon from her trembling hands. Then he pulled her against his chest so tightly Emma couldn't breathe. You terrified me, he murmured against her hair. When Vincent told me they'd taken you early, that they'd moved before we were ready, I thought, I know. Emma's hands fisted in his tactical vest. I thought you'd abandoned me. The video of Vincent, the FBI raid, everything looked so real. That was the point. Vanessa needed to believe she'd won, needed to think you were isolated and desperate so she'd show her hand completely. Lucien pulled back just enough to frame her face with his hands. But Emma, you saw through it. You didn't sign, you didn't break. You held on and you fought and you... His voice went rough. I have never been more proud of anyone in my entire life. Emma's laugh came out shaky. I shot someone. You protected yourself, protected me, became exactly what this life requires. His thumb traced her lower lip. My queen. Emma looked up at him. This dangerous, ruthless, absolutely brilliant man who'd orchestrated everything from the surveillance to the fake betrayal to the final trap, who'd let her think she was alone just to force Vanessa into revealing her entire operation, who'd trusted Emma to be strong enough to survive it. "I hate you a little bit right now," Emma whispered. Lucien smiled. "I know, but you love me more." Unfortunately, he kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of relief so profound it felt like drowning. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "We're getting married tomorrow," he said quietly. "No more delays, no more threats. Just you and me and the empire we're building together." Emma should have argued, should have demanded time to process everything that had just happened, should have done literally anything except agree to marry a man who'd just put her through psychological warfare to catch his enemies. But instead she said, "Okay." Because standing in a warehouse surrounded by violence and victory, Emma finally understood what Lucien had been trying to teach her all along. Power wasn't about being protected. It was about being dangerous enough that no one dared to touch you in the first place. And Emma had just proven she could be exactly that dangerous. "Tomorrow," she agreed. "But Lucien." "Yes?" "No more tests, no more traps, no more letting me think you've abandoned me to prove a point." His smile turned wicked. "I make no promises." "Lucien." He kissed her again, silencing her protest. And Emma surrendered to it, surrendered to him, and realized she wouldn't change a single thing about the monster she'd chosen to love. Even when he terrified her, especially when he terrified her, because that meant they were equals. The cleanup took 3 hours. Emma sat in the back of an SUV wrapped in Lucien's jacket, watching his security team methodically erase every trace of what had happened in that warehouse. Bodies were moved. Blood was scrubbed. Evidence was collected and cataloged with the kind of efficiency that came from doing this too many times before. She should have been horrified, should have been questioning every choice that led her to this moment, sitting in the aftermath of a gunfight, having shot someone herself, watching criminals cover up crimes. But all Emma felt was exhausted relief. It was over. The Hales network was destroyed. Vanessa was in custody, real custody this time, not the staged version Emma had seen on that laptop. And tomorrow, Emma would marry the most dangerous man in New York. If she survived the wedding. Lucien climbed into the SUV beside her, his tactical gear replaced with a clean shirt and slacks he'd pulled from somewhere. Blood still stained his knuckles. He caught Emma looking and wiped his hands with deliberate care. "Vincent's team is handling the authorities," he said quietly. "Federal arrest warrants for the entire network. Charges ranging from kidnapping to conspiracy to attempted murder. The evidence is airtight." "Because you built it that way." "Yes." No apology in his voice, just fact. Emma leaned her head against the window, watching the city lights blur past as they drove back toward Manhattan. "The video of you getting arrested, the FBI raid, how did you fake all of that?" "Professional actors, rented tactical gear, a production crew I've used before for similar operations." Lucien's hand found hers in the darkness. Vanessa was so convinced she'd won that she didn't verify the footage, didn't check sources. She saw what she wanted to see. And Vincent's betrayal? Carefully staged. He transferred $5 million of my money into an account under his name, then transferred it right back 30 seconds later. But the initial transaction was real enough to convince Vanessa's people. Lucien's thumb traced circles on her palm. The entire operation was designed to make Vanessa feel powerful, make her reveal her full network, force her into a confrontation where we controlled every variable. Emma turned to look at him. In the dim light from passing street lamps, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. "You knew they'd take me early, that they'd move before the wedding." "I suspected." Vanessa's pattern suggested she'd want maximum psychological impact, taking you when you felt most vulnerable, most isolated. His jaw tightened. "I didn't know for certain, which meant I had to let it happen and trust that you'd be strong enough to survive until we could extract you." "You used me as bait." "Yes." "Without telling me." "Yes." Emma's laugh came out bitter. "That's the second time tonight someone's told me you've been manipulating me. At what point do I start believing them?" Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The difference between manipulation and strategy is consent. I manipulated Vanessa because she's my enemy, but Emma..." He turned to face her fully. Everything I've done with you has been about making you stronger, teaching you how to survive in my world. I didn't tell you about tonight's plan because if you'd known, Vanessa would have sensed it. Your fear had to be real for her to believe she'd won, so you let me think you'd abandoned me. Let me think Vincent betrayed us. Let me sit in that warehouse believing I was completely alone. Yes, and I will never forgive myself for it. His hand tightened on hers. But Emma, you survived. You saw through Vanessa's lies. You held your ground, and you fought back, and you proved you don't need me to save you. You can save yourself. Emma wanted to stay angry, wanted to rage at him for putting her through that terror. But looking into his eyes, she saw the truth he wasn't saying. This was what being his partner meant, being strong enough to endure psychological warfare, being smart enough to see through manipulation, being dangerous enough to protect herself when he couldn't be there. I hate that you're right, she whispered. Lucienne's smile was sad. I know. And I hate that I'm still going to marry you tomorrow. I know that too. Emma leaned against him, letting exhaustion pull her under. If you ever use me as bait again without warning me first, you'll shoot me yourself? Worse, I'll take half your empire in the divorce. Lucien's laugh was genuine and warm. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Noted. The SUV pulled up outside the peninsula. Emma's hotel suite, the one she'd been taken from just hours ago, now had armed security posted at every entrance. Insurance that it wouldn't happen again. Get some sleep, Lucienne said as they rode the elevator up. The wedding is in 10 hours. Emma's pulse quickened. Are you staying? No, I'm going back to the estate to make sure every loose end is tied up. Vincent will be here. Full security detail. Nothing gets through that door without my explicit approval. Lucienne? He turned to face her, his hands framing her face with devastating gentleness. Tomorrow, you become my wife. Officially, legally, irrevocably. And every enemy I've ever made will know that touching you means declaring war on me. His voice dropped lower. So tonight I'm going to make absolutely certain that no one is stupid enough to try. Emma understood. This wasn't him being paranoid. This was him being thorough, making sure their wedding day wouldn't be interrupted by some threat he'd missed. Okay, she said quietly. Lucien kissed her, soft and claiming and full of unspoken promises. Then he was gone, leaving Emma standing in her suite with Vincent stationed outside and the weight of tomorrow pressing down on her shoulders. She should have tried to sleep, should have taken a shower, eaten something, done literally anything productive. Instead, Emma stood at the windows overlooking Central Park and tried to process the fact that in 10 hours she would marry a man who'd just orchestrated a military operation to trap his enemies, who'd used her as bait and let her think she was abandoned, who'd taught her to shoot and expected her to be dangerous enough to survive his world, who loved her with the kind of ruthless absoluteness that most people would call obsession. Her phone buzzed. Lucienne, still awake? Emma, can't sleep. Lucienne, nervous? Emma, terrified. Lucienne, good. That means you're thinking clearly. Tomorrow changes everything. Emma, I know. Lucienne, any regrets? Emma stared at that question for a long time. Thought about the woman she'd been 8 months ago, invisible, afraid, hiding bruises and pretending everything was fine. Thought about the woman she'd become, powerful, dangerous, standing in penthouses wearing diamond rings and holding weapons like they were natural extensions of her body. Emma, none. Lucien, I love you. Emma, I know. Now go terrorize your enemies and let me get some sleep. Lucien, yes, ma'am. Emma smiled despite everything and finally crawled into bed. But sleep came slowly, tangled up with images of warehouses and gunfire and the cold weight of a weapon in her hands. Tomorrow she would become Emma Moretti, and the woman who'd once been afraid of everything would become untouchable. Tetik. The wedding venue was a private estate an hour north of the city, hidden behind stone walls and ancient trees that had been standing since before Manhattan had skyscrapers. Lucien owned the property through one of his shell corporations. 200 acres of forests and gardens and absolute privacy. Emma arrived at noon in a car escorted by 3 security vehicles. Vincent rode beside her, scanning every shadow with the paranoid efficiency of someone who'd spent too many years keeping dangerous people alive. "Lucien's already here," Vincent said as they passed through the main gates, along with 30 of our best people positioned throughout the grounds. "If anyone tries anything today, they won't make it past the tree line." Emma nodded but didn't respond. Her mind was focused on the dress hanging in the garment bag beside her. White silk, simple lines, nothing ostentatious. Exactly what she'd wanted. The estate's main house was gorgeous, all stone and dark wood and windows that let in winter light. Staff moved through the halls with quiet efficiency, setting up flowers and tables and sound equipment for the ceremony. Emma was led to a private suite on the second floor. Her hands shook as she unzipped the garment bag. A knock at the door made her freeze. "It's me!" called a familiar voice. Emma opened the door to find her younger sister Kate standing in the hallway looking uncertain and hopeful. They hadn't spoken in 4 months, not since Emma had announced her engagement to Lucien and Kate had called her insane. "Kate," Emma's throat tightened. "What are you doing here?" "Lucien called me yesterday. Said you might want family at your wedding even if you were too stubborn to ask." Kate stepped inside and closed the door. "Emma, I'm sorry. For everything I said. For not supporting you, for—" Emma pulled her into a hug before she could finish. "It's okay," Emma whispered. "You weren't wrong. This is insane. But you're happy?" Emma pulled back to meet her sister's eyes. Terrified, but yes, happy. Kate's smile was tremulous. "Then that's all that matters. Now let me help you get dressed before you marry New York's most eligible criminal." They laughed, high and shaky and full of the kind of relief that came from reconnecting after too long apart. And for the next 2 hours, Emma let herself be just a bride, not a strategic partner or a dangerous weapon or the future queen of an underground empire, just a woman getting married. The dress fit perfectly. Kate did her makeup, subtle, elegant, nothing that hid Emma's face. And when Emma finally looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Strong, certain, ready. "You look terrifying," Kate said with obvious admiration. "Good." They walked downstairs together at exactly 3 p.m. The ceremony was being held in the estate's conservatory, a glass-walled room filled with winter flowers and soft candlelight. 50 people waited in chairs arranged in neat rows. Emma recognized some of them from Moretti Global. Others were faces she'd seen in Lucien's security briefings. Allies, business partners, people who moved in the same shadowy spaces Lucien did. No one from Emma's old life except Kate. Everyone else had stopped calling after the engagement announcement. Their loss. Vincent appeared at Emma's side. "You ready?" "Yes." "Good, because the groom looks about 10 seconds away from coming to find you himself." Emma smiled and took Vincent's offered arm. Kate would walk ahead as her only bridesmaid. Vincent would give her away since Emma's father had made it clear he wanted nothing to do with this wedding. The music started, something classical and beautiful that Emma barely heard over her hammering pulse. The doors opened. And at the far end of the conservatory, standing beneath an arch of white roses, was Lucien. He was wearing a black suit that fit like a second skin, his dark hair perfectly styled, his storm gray eyes locked on Emma with the kind of intensity that made breathing difficult. He looked like power incarnate, like a king waiting for his queen. Emma walked toward him with her head high and her hand steady on Vincent's arm. Every person in that room watched her with careful respect. They knew who she was, what she represented. The fact that she'd survived last night's operation had already spread through Lucien's network. She wasn't just marrying their boss. She was becoming their equal. When Emma reached the altar, Lucien stepped forward and took her hand from Vincent with deliberate possession. His thumb traced her pulse point, finding it racing, and his smile was devastating. "You're late," he murmured. "I'm worth waiting for." "Yes, you are." The officiant began speaking, something about love and partnership and commitment. Emma barely heard it. All her focus was on Lucien's hand holding hers, the way his eyes never left her face, the absolute certainty radiating from him. This was happening. This was real. "Do you, Lucien Moretti, take Emma Whitmore to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." No hesitation, just certainty. "And do you, Emma Whitmore, take Lucien Moretti to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Emma looked into the eyes of the man who'd terrified her, protected her, manipulated her, trained her, and loved her with the kind of dangerous absoluteness that most people would call madness. I do. Lucian's smile was pure triumph. He slid the wedding band onto her finger, platinum to match her engagement ring, and she did the same for him. You may kiss your bride. Lucian pulled Emma against him and kissed her like he owned her, deep and claiming and absolutely certain. The room erupted in polite applause, but Emma barely heard it over the roaring in her ears. She was married to Lucian Moretti. She'd become exactly what Vanessa had accused her of being, complicit in his empire, bound to his violence, transformed into something dangerous and untouchable. And Emma didn't regret a single second of it. The reception was elegant and controlled. Dinner, dancing, speeches from Vincent, and a few board members about Emma's brilliance and strategic value. Everyone carefully avoided mentioning what she really was, the Queen of New York's shadow empire, standing beside its king. Emma danced with Lucien while snow began falling outside the conservatory windows. His hand was possessive on her waist, his eyes dark with the kind of hunger that had nothing to do with food. 4 hours, he murmured against her ear. Then everyone leaves, and you're mine. I've been yours for months. Not like this. Tonight there's no pretense, no hiding, just you and me and... His phone buzzed. Lucian's expression went cold. He pulled the phone out and glanced at the screen. Then his entire body went rigid. What? Emma's pulse spiked. What's wrong? Vincent! Lucian was already moving toward the security chief stationed near the doors. Emma followed, her stomach churning with sudden dread. Vincent met them halfway, his face grim. Boss, we have a problem. Talk. Caleb Hale posted bail an hour ago. Emma's blood went cold. Caleb Hale, Vanessa's father, Travis's father, the disgraced financier who'd funded the entire operation. He'd been arrested yesterday along with everyone else in the network. How is that possible? Lucian's voice had gone dangerously quiet. His bail was set at $5 million. Someone paid it. We're still tracking who. Vincent pulled up his tablet. But boss, he's gone dark. No phone signal, no credit card activity, no surveillance footage. He disappeared 30 minutes after release. Find him. We're trying. But Lucian... Vincent hesitated. He made a call before he went dark. 3 minutes to an unknown number. We're running traces now, but... Lucian's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. Who is this? Heavy breathing. Then a voice Emma recognized from police reports and surveillance files. Caleb Hale. Lucien Moretti, congratulations on your wedding. The voice was cultured, smooth, completely calm. I'm sorry I couldn't attend in person, but I did send a gift. Lucian's eyes went lethal. What did you do? Nothing yet, but I will if you don't do exactly what I say. A pause. You destroyed my daughter, arrested my son, ruined my family, and now I'm going to return the favor. If you touch Emma... Emma? No. She's already made her choice. She's yours now. I accept that. Caleb's laugh was hollow. But Lucien, you have a weakness you don't even know about yet. And in exactly 60 seconds, you're going to have to choose. The line went dead. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. What does that mean? What weakness? Lucien was already moving toward the windows, Vincent right behind him. Emma followed on instinct, her wedding dress tangling around her legs as she tried to keep up. Outside, the estate grounds were quiet, peaceful. Security teams patrolling in coordinated patterns. Everything looked normal. Then Emma saw it. A figure walking across the lawn toward the conservatory. Small, hunched, moving with obvious difficulty. Emma couldn't see their face, but something about the silhouette made her blood freeze. Vincent grabbed binoculars and focused. Then he swore viciously. Boss, I see it. Lucien's voice had gone completely flat. See what? Emma demanded. Who is that? Lucien handed her the binoculars without speaking. Emma raised them to her eyes and adjusted the focus. The figure came into sharp clarity. It was a child. A boy, maybe 8 years old, wearing a winter coat that was too big for him. His face was pale and frightened, and strapped to his chest was something that made Emma's hands start shaking, a vest covered in wires, and what looked like blocks of plastic explosive. No. Emma's voice came out strangled. No, that's not. Who is that? My nephew. Lucien's voice was completely dead. My sister's son, Marco. Emma's mind went blank with horror. Lucien had a sister, a nephew, family he'd never mentioned, never introduced her to, family she hadn't even known existed, and Caleb Hale had just turned that child into a walking bomb. Lucien's phone rang again. What do you want? Lucien's voice was barely recognizable. Simple. You have 60 seconds to decide. Caleb's voice came through crystal clear. The bomb is real. The trigger is in my hand. If you try to disarm it, I detonate. If you send your security team anywhere near that boy, I detonate. The only way he survives is if you do exactly what I say. Name your terms. Leave. Right now. Walk out of that conservatory, get in a car, and drive away from your empire. Leave Emma. Leave your businesses. Leave everything. Disappear and never come back. Do that and I'll send the disarm code. The boy lives. You lose everything, but you keep your soul. Emma's hands clenched into fists. He's bluffing. He has to be. Or, Caleb continued, you stay. You choose your empire and your wife and your power. And I push this button and your nephew becomes a stain on your wedding venue. A pause. 45 seconds, Lucien. What's more important, your family or your ambition? The line stayed open, waiting, counting down. Emma stared at the child walking slowly across the lawn, each step bringing him closer to the conservatory full of people. 50 guests. Staff. Kate. Everyone Emma cared about except the man standing beside her. Lucien was completely still. His face had gone blank in the way it did when he was calculating trajectories and outcomes and acceptable losses. 30 seconds. Vincent moved closer. Boss, we can evacuate. Not fast enough. Lucien's voice was mechanical. He's 30 yards out. If Caleb detonates now, the blast radius catches the entire building. Then we disarm. He'll see us coming. He's watching from somewhere. The moment anyone gets close, that boy dies. 20 seconds. Emma's mind raced. This was impossible. There was no good choice. No strategy that saved everyone. Either Lucien walked away and lost everything he'd built, lost Emma, or he stayed and watched his nephew die. 15 seconds. Choose, Lucien. Emma looked at the man beside her, the monster she'd married, the king of New York's shadow empire, the person who'd taught her that power meant making impossible choices. And she realized with sudden, terrible clarity that there was only one choice that mattered. Go, Emma said quietly. Lucien's head snapped toward her. What? Save him. Your nephew. Go, right now. Emma's voice was steady despite the tears burning her eyes. Everything else we can rebuild. But if that child dies, you'll never forgive yourself. So go. Emma. 10 seconds. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Emma grabbed his face between her hands. Because I love you, and because that's what partners do. We save each other's souls even when it costs us everything. Lucien stared at her with something between agony and rage and love so profound it looked like death. 5 seconds. I will find you, Lucien whispered. I will destroy Caleb Hale. I will burn this entire world down. And I will come back for you. I know. 3 seconds. Lucien kissed her, desperate and devastating and final. Then he turned and ran, out of the conservatory, across the lawn, directly toward his nephew. Caleb's voice cut through the phone speaker. Smart choice. Now keep walking, and... The line went dead. Emma watched through the windows as Lucien reached the child and dropped to his knees, watched him carefully, methodically, begin examining the vest, watched security teams spread out in defensive positions, watched the man she'd married choose between his empire and his family, and choose family. But standing there in her wedding dress, with her heart breaking into pieces, Emma realized Caleb had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed Emma would fall apart without Lucien, would collapse into helplessness and let his empire crumble. He'd underestimated the woman Lucien had spent months training to be dangerous. Emma turned to Vincent. Her voice came out cold, controlled, absolutely lethal. Find Caleb Hale. I don't care how you do it. I don't care what it costs. Find him and bring him to me alive. Vincent stared at her. Mrs. Moretti, that's an order. Emma's eyes were ice. And Vincent, tell every person in our network that if they want to keep breathing, they better start treating me like I'm Lucian, because until he comes back," she looked out at her husband kneeling in the snow trying to save a child's life. "I'm running this empire." Vincent's expression shifted from shock to something like fierce respect. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. And Emma Moretti, married for exactly 2 hours, stood in her wedding reception and watched her entire life explode into chaos while snow fell like ash outside the windows. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. And Caleb Hale was about to learn exactly what happened when you threatened a queen who'd learned to be just as dangerous as her king. Lucian's hands moved with surgical precision across the vest strapped to Marco's chest. The boy was crying silently, his small body shaking with terror as Lucien whispered reassurances in Italian, the language of their family, the language of childhood safety that felt like a lifetime ago. Snow fell around them in the floodlit darkness while Vincent's bomb tech talked Lucy through the disarm process over comms. "Red wire connects to the primary trigger," the tech said, his voice steady despite the stakes. "But there's a secondary pressure switch under the 4th block. You cut wrong and I know." Lucian's voice was dead calm. His hands didn't shake, couldn't shake, because 8-year-old Marco was looking up at him with eyes that said, "Uncle, save me," and Lucian would rather die than fail this child. Inside the conservatory, Emma stood frozen at the windows, watching her husband kneel in the snow, defusing a bomb strapped to a child. Around her, the wedding guests had been quietly evacuated through side exits. Kate had tried to pull Emma away, but Emma had refused to move. She wouldn't look away, wouldn't hide. If Lucian died out there, she would witness it. Vincent appeared at her shoulder, phone pressed to his ear. "We've got a location on Caleb Hale, abandoned industrial park in Queens. Thermal imaging shows one person inside. Has to be him." Emma's voice came out ice cold. "How long to get there?" 20 minutes. "Make it 15. Emma turned to face him. "And Vincent? I want him alive. He gets to watch what happens when you threaten him already." Vincent's expression was grim respect. "Yes, ma'am." Outside, Lucian cut the red wire. Nothing happened. Marco's breathing hitched with desperate hope. Lucian moved to the secondary switch, his fingers steady despite the sweat beading his forehead. One wrong move, one miscalculation. And this child, his sister's son, the family Lucian had kept hidden from his empire to protect them from exactly this, would cease to exist. "Almost there," Lucian murmured. "You're doing great, Marco. So brave. Your mother would be so proud." "Is she coming?" Marco's voice cracked. "Did you call her?" Lucian's jaw tightened. His sister Elena lived in Italy with Marco, deliberately kept separate from Lucien's New York operations. She didn't know her son had been kidnapped. Didn't know he was currently 30 seconds away from being blown apart. "She's on her way," Lucien lied. "But first I need you to hold very, very still. Can you do that?" Marco nodded, tears streaming down his face. Lucien disabled the pressure switch with one careful twist. Then he lifted the entire vest off Marco's shoulders and handed it to the bomb tech who'd approached from the side. The tech took it carefully and walked toward the blast containment unit set up 50 yards away. Marco collapsed against Lucien, sobbing. Lucien wrapped his arms around the child and closed his eyes. His hands started shaking now that it was over, now that the adrenaline had nowhere to go except through his body in violent tremors. "You're safe," he whispered against Marco's hair. "You're safe. I've got you." But even as he said it, Lucien's eyes lifted to the conservatory windows where Emma stood watching, where his wife, his partner, his queen, had just watched him choose family over empire, had watched him walk away from her on their wedding day. And Lucien knew with cold certainty that Caleb Hale had just declared a war that would only end with one of them dead. Emma rode in the lead SUV toward Queens, with Vincent beside her and 4 armed security personnel filling the remaining seats. She'd changed out of her wedding dress into tactical pants and a black sweater someone had pulled from the estate's security supplies. Her hair was still pinned up from the ceremony. Her makeup was still perfect, but the woman wearing it had transformed into something colder. Vincent glanced at her as they crossed the Queensboro Bridge. "You know this might be a trap." "I know. Caleb could have explosives rigged throughout the building. Could have backup we haven't identified. Could be planning to take you hostage the moment we walk through that door. I know. Mrs. Moretti. Emma. Her voice cut through the vehicle like a blade. If we're going to war together, call me Emma. Vincent nodded slowly. Emma, are you sure about this? Because Lucien would want me to take you somewhere safe. Wait until he can. Lucien chose to save his nephew, and I'm choosing to end the threat that put that child in danger in the first place. Emma's hands were steady in her lap. Caleb Hale doesn't get to walk away from this. He doesn't get to disappear and plan his next attack. Tonight, this ends. The SUV pulled into the industrial park 15 minutes later. The area was abandoned, rusted warehouses and cracked pavement and darkness so complete the headlights barely cut through it. Thermal imaging showed one heat signature in the central building exactly where Vincent's intel had indicated. Emma climbed out of the vehicle before anyone could stop her. Wait for backup, Vincent ordered. Another team is 3 minutes out. No? Emma pulled the weapon from the holster Vincent had given her. She checked the magazine with muscle memory Lucien had drilled into her over weeks of training. He's expecting Lucien. When he sees me instead, he'll hesitate. That's our opening. Vincent looked like he wanted to argue. Then he just sighed and checked his own weapon. Stay behind me. And Emma, if something goes wrong, if this goes sideways, you run. You don't try to save me. You don't try to negotiate. You run, and you let Lucien handle the rest. Noted. They moved toward the building in formation. Vincent on point, Emma behind him, 4 security personnel flanking. The door was unlocked. That alone should have been a warning. Inside, the warehouse was gutted and empty except for a single chair in the center of the space. Sitting in that chair, illuminated by a battery-powered lantern, was Caleb Hale. He looked older than his photographs, gray hair, deep lines around his mouth, expensive suit rumpled and stained, but his eyes were sharp and calculating as they fixed on Emma. Mrs. Moretti. His voice was cultured, calm. I was expecting your husband. My husband is busy saving the child you tried to murder. Emma stepped forward, her weapon trained on Caleb's chest. So you get me instead. Caleb's smile was thin. How unfortunate. I wanted Lucien to see this. See what? His empire crumbling, his legacy destroyed, everything he built reduced to ash. Caleb leaned back in the chair like he was holding court instead of sitting in an abandoned warehouse at gunpoint. You think tonight was about revenge? About punishing Lucien for what he did to my family? That was just the opening move. Vincent moved closer, his weapon never wavering. Where's the rest of your network? Gone. Scattered. Vanessa's in federal custody, but she'll be out eventually. Travis is broken, but he'll heal. And me? Caleb's smile widened. I'm exactly where I need to be. Emma's instincts screamed danger. Vincent, get everyone out, now! But it was already too late. Caleb pressed something in his hand and the building's support columns exploded. Not enough to bring the entire structure down immediately. Just enough to compromise the integrity. To start a collapse that would take 30 seconds to complete. 30 seconds to escape or die. Vincent grabbed Emma and physically threw her toward the exit. Run! Emma hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up running. Behind her, she heard shouting, gunfire, the groan of metal twisting under impossible stress. She didn't look back, didn't hesitate, just ran toward the rectangle of darkness that marked the doorway while the world came apart behind her. She made it outside with 5 seconds to spare. The warehouse collapsed inward with a roar like the end of the world. Dust and debris exploded outward in a choking cloud. Emma hit the ground, covering her head as chunks of concrete and twisted metal rained down around her. Then silence. Emma lifted her head, coughing, her ears ringing. The warehouse was gone. Just a pile of rubble and twisted steel slowly settling in the darkness. Vincent! Her voice came out hoarse. Vincent! No response. Emma staggered to her feet, her entire body shaking. The security team that had been flanking them was gone. Buried. Dead. And Vincent. A hand emerged from the rubble 20 feet away. Emma ran toward it, dropping to her knees and digging frantically through debris. Vincent's face appeared, covered in blood and dust. She grabbed his arm and pulled with everything she had. He came free with a gasp of pain. Emma, get back. Shut up and move. She hauled him away from the wreckage just as another section collapsed. They made it to the SUV and Emma shoved Vincent into the back seat. He was bleeding from a gash across his forehead and his left arm hung at a wrong angle. The others? His voice was slurred with pain or concussion or both. Emma looked back at the rubble, at the burial ground where 4 of Lucien's people had just died because she'd insisted on moving immediately instead of waiting for backup. Gone, she whispered. Vincent's expression went hollow. Caleb? Dead. Has to be. Nothing could survive that collapse. But even as Emma said it, she wasn't sure. Caleb had triggered the explosion, had been sitting in the exact center of the building. The chances he'd escaped were minimal, but not impossible. Emma's phone rang. Lucienne. She answered with shaking hands. I'm here. Are you hurt? His voice was rough with barely controlled fear. No. Vincent's injured. 4 of our people are dead. The building collapsed. Caleb Hale. Her voice broke. Lucienne, I'm sorry. I should have waited. Should have. You're alive. That's all that matters. A pause. I'm coming to you. Where are you? Emma gave him the coordinates. Then she said quietly, I lost them. 4 people. Because I made a bad call. You made the only call you could with the information you had. Caleb wanted this. Wanted you to chase him. Wanted to prove that without me, you'd fail. Lucien's voice turned cold. He was wrong. You survived. And now we're going to make sure he didn't. What does that mean? It means we're not leaving until we confirm he's dead. I'm 10 minutes out. Don't move until I get there. The line went dead. Emma sat on the SUV's bumper and stared at the rubble, while Vincent leaned against the vehicle beside her, breathing in shallow gasps. Sirens wailed in the distance, fire trucks, ambulances, police responding to reports of an explosion. Emma's wedding day, the day that was supposed to mark a new beginning, and it had ended with her kneeling in debris, counting bodies. Lucien arrived with 20 personnel and equipment that made it clear he wasn't taking chances. Excavation tools, medical supplies, body bags. He found Emma exactly where she'd said she'd be, sitting on the SUV's bumper with blood on her hands and devastation in her eyes. The moment he saw her, something cracked in his controlled expression. He crossed the distance in 4 strides and pulled her against his chest so hard Emma couldn't breathe. You're alive, he murmured against her hair. You're alive. You're alive. Emma's hands fisted in his jacket. I'm sorry, I should have. No! Lucien pulled back to frame her face with his hands. You did exactly what I would have done, what I trained you to do. You went after the threat. You tried to end it. The fact that Caleb was prepared doesn't make you responsible for the people we lost. But, Emma, his voice turned sharp. This is what our life looks like. Sometimes people die. Sometimes missions fail. Sometimes the enemy gets one move ahead and we pay the price. But you survived. And that means we're still in this fight. Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to accept that the deaths weren't her fault. But looking at the rubble where 4 people had been buried alive, she couldn't escape the weight of it. Lucien turned to his team. I want every piece of that building moved, every body recovered. And if Caleb Hale is in there, I want confirmation. The excavation took 4 hours. They found the security team first, 3 bodies crushed beyond recognition. The 4th had died instantly when a support beam fell across his spine. Emma forced herself to watch as they were loaded into body bags, forced herself to remember their faces from the ride over, forced herself to carry the weight of what her decisions had cost. Then, in the center of the collapse where Caleb had been sitting, they found a void. A pocket of space where the debris had fallen in such a way that it created a small cavity. And in that cavity, covered in dust and blood but still breathing, was Caleb Hale. He was unconscious, both legs shattered, severe head trauma, but alive. Lucien stared down at the broken man who'd tried to destroy everything he'd built. Then he looked at Emma. Your call, he said quietly. He tried to kill Marco. He tried to kill you. He got 4 of our people killed. What happens to him now is your decision. Emma looked at Caleb Hale, this desperate, pathetic man who'd lost everything and tried to drag everyone else down with him. She should have felt rage, should have wanted him dead the way Lucien's eyes suggested he deserved, but all Emma felt was exhausted pity, Get him medical attention, she said quietly. Then turn him over to the FBI. Let him spend the rest of his life in prison knowing he failed. That his daughter is in custody, his son is permanently damaged, and the empire he tried to destroy is still standing. Lucian studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. He gestured to his team and they carefully extracted Caleb from the rubble. Paramedics took over, stabilizing him for transport. Within 20 minutes, he was loaded into an ambulance with federal agents waiting to take custody the moment he was medically cleared. Emma watched the ambulance pull away with its sirens wailing into the pre-dawn darkness. It was over. The Hales were finished. The network was destroyed. The threat was neutralized. And Emma was still standing. Lucian's hand found hers in the darkness. Let's go home. Pag. Home turned out to be the penthouse overlooking Central Park, the place Emma had only visited twice before. Lucian's private sanctuary, now hers too. The place where they would rebuild everything that had been shattered tonight. Dawn was breaking over Manhattan as they rode the elevator up in silence. Vincent had been taken to a private hospital. The bodies of the fallen security team had been delivered to their families with condolences and financial compensation that would never be enough. And somewhere in Italy, Elena was being told that her son was safe, but her brother's empire had just gone to war. Emma stood at the penthouse windows watching the city wake up below. She was still wearing tactical gear, still had dust in her hair and blood under her fingernails, still looked like someone who'd just survived a building collapse and 4 deaths and a wedding day that had turned into a battlefield. Lucian came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. He didn't speak, just held her while they watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. I killed them, Emma said finally. Her voice was hollow. Those 4 people. I made the call to move immediately and Caleb killed them. Lucian's voice was firm. He rigged that building. He planned the ambush. He knew you'd come for him, and he used that knowledge to hurt us. You're not responsible for the tactics of a desperate man. I should have waited for backup. Maybe. Or maybe if you'd waited, Caleb would have detonated remotely and killed everyone in the building, including you and Vincent. Lucian turned her to face him. Emma, listen to me. Leadership means making decisions with incomplete information. It means accepting that sometimes people die because of those decisions. If you can't carry that weight, then we need to have a different conversation about your role in this empire. Emma met his eyes. I can carry it, but I'm not going to pretend it doesn't hurt. Good. That means you're still human. The day it stops hurting is the day you've become the monster everyone thinks we are. Emma's laugh came out bitter. Aren't we already? No. Monsters don't feel guilt, don't question their choices, don't lie awake at night seeing the faces of people they couldn't save. Lucian's hands framed her face. We do terrible things, Emma. We break laws and hurt people and operate in moral gray zones that most people can't even comprehend. But we do it with intention, with purpose, with rules that keep us from becoming the chaos we're trying to contain. Like what rules? Like we don't hurt children, don't target families, don't use innocents as shields. Lucian's expression turned dark. Caleb broke all of those rules tonight. He strapped a bomb to an 8-year-old child. He killed 4 people who were just doing their jobs. He tried to murder my wife on our wedding day. So now he gets to spend the rest of his life in a federal prison cell knowing that every rule he broke came back to destroy him. Emma leaned her forehead against Lucian's chest. I'm tired. I know. I want to sleep for a week and wake up in a world where people don't try to blow us up. That world doesn't exist, not for us. Lucian's arms tightened around her. But Emma, we have each other. We have an empire built on loyalty and strategy and controlled violence. And we have the certainty that anyone who threatens us will learn exactly what happens when they underestimate a Moretti. Emma pulled back to look at him. Is that what I am now? A Moretti? You became a Moretti the moment you chose to stand beside me instead of running. The wedding was just paperwork. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. You're my partner, my queen, the person I trust more than anyone else in this world, and I am so goddamn proud of who you've become. Emma's throat tightened. Even when I make bad calls that get people killed? Especially then, because you're not running from the consequences. You're carrying them, learning from them, becoming stronger and more dangerous because of them. Lucien's smile was sad. That's what leadership looks like, Emma. Not perfection, just the willingness to keep moving forward, even when it costs you pieces of your soul. Emma kissed him then, desperate and exhausted and full of too many emotions to name. When she finally pulled back, her voice was rough. I need a shower, and sleep, and probably therapy. I can provide 2 of those 3 immediately. They showered together in silence, washing away blood and dust and the physical residue of a night that would haunt them both for years. Then they collapsed into Lucian's enormous bed, now their bed, and lay tangled together while Manhattan woke up outside. Emma should have been afraid, should have been questioning every choice that led her to this moment, should have been planning her escape from a life that had just proven it could turn lethal without warning. But lying in Lucian's arms with winter light creeping through the windows, all Emma felt was certainty. This was her life now. Violence and strategy and impossible choices. Partnership with a man who'd taught her to be dangerous enough to survive his world. An empire built on loyalty and controlled chaos and the willingness to do terrible things for defensible reasons. I love you, she whispered against his shoulder. Lucien's arms tightened. I love you too, even when you're terrifying. Especially when I'm terrifying. Yes, especially then. Emma closed her eyes and let exhaustion pull her under. Tomorrow would bring damage control and funeral arrangements and rebuilding what had been shattered. Tomorrow she would have to face Elena and explain how Marco had been turned into a weapon. Tomorrow she would have to stand in front of Lucien's organization and prove she deserved her place beside their king. But tonight, right now, she was just Emma Moretti, alive, dangerous, untouchable, and finally, completely, home. Ipotch. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in Moretti Global's boardroom facing the executive leadership team, with Lucian seated at her right hand. The room was silent as she laid out her new strategic vision: expanded operations in legitimate markets, stronger security protocols to prevent infiltration, clear rules of engagement that would keep their empire from sliding into the chaos Caleb Hale had tried to create. We operate in gray zones, Emma said, her voice steady and controlled. But that doesn't mean we operate without ethics. From this point forward, families are off limits, children are untouchable, and anyone in our network who violates those rules will be removed, permanently. One of the older board members, a man who'd been with Lucian for 15 years, raised his hand. Mrs. Moretti, with respect, that kind of restriction makes us vulnerable. Enemies already use families as weapons. We saw that 3 weeks ago. Emma's eyes were cold. The question is whether we respond by becoming the monsters they expect, or whether we draw lines that make us better than them. I choose the latter. This organization survives because we're smarter, more strategic, and more controlled than anyone else. Not because we're willing to murder children. The board member sat back, chastened. Another executive spoke up. What about retaliation? The Hales network may be broken, but there could be others looking for revenge. Let them look. Emma's smile was sharp. Anyone who comes after a Moretti now knows exactly what they're facing. Not just Lucien's resources and strategy, but both of us. Together. And I promise you, anyone stupid enough to try will learn why that was a mistake. The room fell silent. Emma could feel them recalculating, reassessing, understanding that she wasn't just Lucian's wife or his strategic partner. She was a threat in her own right. Lucien stood, drawing all eyes to him. Emma is right. We draw lines. We maintain control. And we make absolutely certain that what happened 3 weeks ago never happens again. He looked around the room with lethal precision. Anyone who has a problem with this new direction can leave, with compensation, with our gratitude for past service. But without the protection of this organization, choose now. Nobody moved. Good. Lucian's smile was cold. Then this meeting is adjourned. Get back to work. And remember, you work for Moretti Global Holdings. That means you work for both of us. The executives filed out in silence. When the room was empty except for Emma and Lucian, he turned to her with obvious pride. You were magnificent. Emma's laugh came out shaky. I was terrified. Good. That means you were thinking clearly. Lucian pulled her against him, his hand possessive on her waist. You know what this means, don't you? What? You're not just my partner anymore. You're the co-architect of everything we build from this point forward. Equal authority. equal responsibility, equal consequences if we fail. Emma looked up at him, this dangerous, brilliant, absolutely ruthless man who'd seen her at her most vulnerable and chosen to make her powerful instead of keeping her dependent, who'd taught her to shoot and strategize and carry the weight of impossible choices, who'd given her an empire and trusted her not to break it. "I'm ready," she said quietly. Lucien's smile was devastating. "I know you are." He kissed her in the empty boardroom with Manhattan sprawling beneath them, and the future stretching out like uncharted territory. And Emma realized with sudden, crystalline clarity that the frightened woman who'd once hidden bruises behind makeup was gone completely. In her place stood someone stronger, harder, dangerous enough that enemies would think twice before threatening her. Someone who'd learned that power wasn't about being protected. It was about being feared. 6 months later, Emma sat in her corner office reviewing acquisition reports when her assistant buzzed through. "Mrs. Moretti, your sister is here." Emma looked up in surprise. Kate hadn't visited the office before, had kept her distance from the Empire even after attending the wedding, but now she stood in the doorway looking uncertain and hopeful. "Kate," Emma gestured to the chair across from her desk. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Kate sat down, twisting her hands together. "I wanted to see you, see how you're doing." Emma studied her sister. "I'm good. Busy, but good." "You look different. Older, maybe. Or just—" Kate searched for the word. "Harder. That happens when your wedding day ends with explosions and body counts?" Emma's voice was dry, but not unkind. Kate flinched. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up." "It's fine. It's part of my life now. Part of who I am." Emma leaned back in her chair. "What do you really want to know, Kate? Because you didn't come all the way to Manhattan just to make small talk." Kate took a breath. "Are you happy?" The question hung in the air between them. Emma thought about the past 6 months, the brutal work of rebuilding security protocols, the funerals she'd attended for the people who'd died that night, the nightmares that still woke her up at 3 a.m. seeing Marco in that vest, the board meetings where she'd proven herself over and over until even the most skeptical executives treated her with respect, the nights spent in Lucien's arms while he whispered strategy and devotion in equal measure, the morning she'd woken up and realized she didn't feel afraid anymore, didn't feel powerless, didn't feel like the world could hurt her without consequences. "Yes," Emma said finally, "I'm happy. Not in any way I expected. Not in any way that looks like what other people call happiness. But Kate, I'm powerful. I'm respected. I'm dangerous enough that threats against me end badly for everyone except me, and I built that with my own hands." Kate's expression was complicated. "Even if it means you're married to a criminal? Even if it means you do terrible things?" "Especially because of that." Emma's smile was sharp. "I spent my whole life being small and afraid and invisible, letting men like Travis hurt me because I thought I deserved it. Now I wake up every morning beside a man who thinks I'm terrifying and loves me because of it. So yes, I'm happy, even with the cost." Kate nodded slowly, then she stood. "Okay. I just needed to hear you say it. Needed to know you weren't, I don't know, trapped." "I'm not trapped. I'm exactly where I choose to be." Kate moved to the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Emma, I'm proud of you. Even if I don't understand your choices, I'm proud that you made them." That's all I needed to hear. Kate left, and Emma turned back to her reports. But her mind wasn't on acquisitions or strategic planning. It was on the woman she'd become. The queen who ruled beside a king. The partner who'd learned to be just as dangerous as her husband. The survivor who'd transformed from victim into something untouchable. Her phone buzzed. "Lucien. Lucien. Dinner tonight? I have something to show you." Emma. "What kind of something?" Lucien. "The kind that requires champagne and a dress that will make me reconsider every decision to work late." Emma. "You know I'm in a meeting for another hour." Lucien. "Then I'll wait. I've gotten good at waiting for you." Emma. "Since when?" Lucien. "Since the moment you walked into my building 8 months ago and changed my entire world." Emma's smile was genuine, soft. The smile she only showed Lucien when they were alone and the masks could finally come off. Emma, I love you. Lucien, I know. Now finish your meeting so I can take my terrifying wife to dinner and remind her why marrying me was the best decision she ever made. Emma set her phone down and looked out at the Manhattan skyline, glittering in the afternoon sun. She thought about the woman who'd arrived at this building bruised and afraid and hoping no one would notice her pain. That woman was gone. In her place stood Emma Moretti, strategic director, board member, co-architect of an empire, and the most dangerous person most people would ever have the misfortune of underestimating. She'd learned that power came from knowing which threats were real and which ones were theater. That love looked different when it was built between two people dangerous enough to destroy each other, but choosing partnership instead. That some prices were worth paying for the freedom to never feel powerless again. And standing in her corner office overlooking the city she now helped rule, Emma realized she wouldn't change a single thing about the monster she'd become. Because this monster was loved, respected, feared, and finally, after a lifetime of being invisible, Emma Moretti was absolutely, undeniably seen. She gathered her files and headed for the boardroom where her next meeting waited, where executives twice her age would hang on her every word because they'd learned that dismissing her was the fastest way to find themselves removed from the organization. Where her empire, hers and Lucien's, built together on loyalty and strategy and controlled violence, would continue growing into something unstoppable. Emma Moretti walked through Moretti Global Holdings with her head high and her steps certain, and the world got out of her way. Because queens didn't ask for space. They took it. And anyone who forgot that lesson learned it exactly once.